Can you tell me how to get to wherever I need to go? Hi, it's me, back with another local affairs stream. I'm here at Stevens, Downtown Line, Thomson East Coast Line. I should be at exit 3. And I will be going along this road until I reach Evans Road. The various roads and places of interest. And coincidentally, this is exit 3. It's after 8. Polling day has ended. Cooling off day has ended. Votes are being counted. And I don't think we will have a result that soon. So I'm taking my own sweet time walking to the assembly center. Please wait, scenery will change in about 20 minutes. Well, since it's night time, probably won't be able to show you anything interesting. I'm taking a break from using the gimbal, so it's just shaky cam. And now onwards to Evans Road, MOE Stadium. This is Willie Road in the direction of PIE. Junctions with Dunyan Road, Bukit Timah Road. So, how was the weather at your end? Sunny, cloudy, showers with thunderstorms. Cat 1 with risk of lightning. Scenery will change in about 10 minutes. Once I get to the correct junction between Bukit Timah Road and Evans Road. Until then, it's all sheltered walkway. Or at least I think it's sheltered walkway. Please don't disappoint me. I could have started my walk from Botanic Gardens MRT station. That would be an even more boring walk. It might be actually closer to the assembly center though, if I were to exit from Botanic Gardens. Visual check. Is the resolution 144p or 720p? Sound check. LED check. 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000, 5000. Sinopec petrol kiosk, Bukit Timah station, 25% instant discount. What a deal! Some of the buses, they can take you to Evans Road. A no parking sign at eye level. They must really not want you to park over here. Whoops. Gotta be attentive. junction between Bugatina Road and Belvie Estate. Wait, is the camera lens actually clear? Okay, let's try again. And we are here, Evans Road. If you can see in the distance, place is well lit. Can you hear anything? Can't hear anything yet, except for the sound of passing cars. Okay, I can start hearing stuff. Right, election meeting straight ahead. Election meeting straight ahead. Generator powered floodlight. Makeshift staircases and flooring, wood and metal. Alright, it's a sports stadium once more. Will I have to walk the whole 400 meters? Will I get a copyright strike by Channel News Asia? Only one way to find out.
So we have a strong mandate. Which exactly will he be looking at? I think if it's both, then of course it will be a good thing. If it's just one, would that necessarily a bad thing?
Okay. Dr. Mustafa? I would say both, votes and seats. Okay. So I think the votes, if you have seen in the past few elections, it has been around 60 to 65%. So anything above 65% may be a clear and strong mandate, or surpassing 2020 perhaps. And also the seats, you don't want to lose more seats. And in this 2025, so perhaps a status quo may well be a clear mandate for him.
But I guess ideally the party would want all three, right? But you know, which outcome do you think matters most to the PAP and which one matters most to the voters?
I think what matters most, because it's PM Lawrence Wong's first general election, and I think he would really want to have a strong mandate in terms of the percentage. So if you can get definitely more than 61%, again, I guess basically on the last general election in 2020. So if it's more than 61%, that would be necessary.
More than 61%.
Last election. If you can get higher,
why not get 66?
That will signal a very, very strong mandate, and that will be good for him as well. But this is his first, foray into the general election as Prime Minister, so he would definitely want to have that good percentage of vote shares.
Yeah, I guess to say he has a very clear signal from the people to go ahead in this way. Well, many issues have been raised, and cost of living is one of the concerns that have dominated the rhetoric across the political spectrum, with both the ruling party and the opposition offering starkly different solutions on how to ease the squeeze. Kate Low takes us through what was said during the campaign trail, starting with the 2 percentage point hike in the goods and services tax.
At the ruling party's traditional lunchtime rally, PM Wong took some time to address citizens' concerns.
Raising the GST was not easy. It was a very difficult decision to make.
While the PAP has repeatedly said the increase was needed to fund social spending.
Without the GST increase, we would not be able to fulfill our promise to take care of our seniors in the aging society.
Opposition parties have hit back.
The police watchtower, currently unmanned.
Trump will raise the GST. Not once, but 2 times. And in the midst of the increase,
There seems to be another entrance straight ahead. Let's see if that's the case. Other than that, the rest of the area has been barricaded and blacked out. Yes, I see a break in the barricades. Car park. Election meeting signboard. It's a sign.
voters who may not just be about who made what promise, but rather who truly understands the holiday spirit. But one thing is for sure, that global market issues like the fees will continue weighing heavily on the PAP politicians long after the matter has been happening. GST, cost of living, always hot button issues there.
So, Dr. Mustafa, how do you think the two sides frame this narrative? And I guess the bigger question is, who is more persuasive?
I think I would for the voters to decide, but I think
There is a non-zero number of human bodies on the field,
and I think that's what we have witnessed throughout the campaign.
and a non-zero plus a lot at the spectator stand.
What they can do about it. So I think at the end of the day, it's about what parties have said, whether that resonate best with you, and I think that's how the voters are going to cast their ballot.
But that's a difficult one. I mean, Dr. Tan, because there's what you know as in the macroeconomic big
Sound
picture,
check.
but then I go out and buy something every day and I'm like, oh, wow, look at this price, and it hits me at that moment. So, can people appreciate and resonate with what are some of the policies being set out there with their lived everyday experiences?
Yeah, I think exactly the point, right? I mean, GST is here to stay. Let that be clear about it. And there's no turning back at this point in time. I don't think that the PAP government is just going to shift back this policy. But I think,
But why?
like you put it across very clearly, it is a lived experience. A lot of Singaporeans are going to go out there on a daily basis to buy groceries, to buy their food, and they will feel the pinch. And how is the government going to mitigate that situation? CDC vouchers are great. SG60 vouchers are fantastic. We love it. We want it. But will it last us for 6 months? A year? What's next after that? So let's look at the policies of all the political parties. I mean, there's a huge range. I mean, the PAP will have one set of policies, which is a bit more broad, general. Of course, some of the parties are a bit more specific about returning, the money back to the Singaporeans or taking from the reserves, which is a little bit extreme. And I think, at the end of the day, voters, I think, like what you have mentioned,
just
about voters
camera
will have to
bombed
decide
the
which
media
of
crew.
these, policies they would want to, take on, and that's where the vote will go.
Well, there, some people, on the ground, they say it's quite hard to understand some of PAP's policies, for instance, except for maybe a small number of ministers who are probably can simplify it for the lay person. So is that something that you agree with? I mean, and do you think the opposition parties did a better job?
I think it's subjective. I think it all boils down to effective communication, right? So how do you best communicate this particular policy to the voters? And the better you are able to
Eli 5,
communicate the message and
explain
what
like
policies
I'm
you have,
5.
how you're going to mitigate it, I think the voters will be able to better appreciate what you have to say. So I think across the spectrum of the political parties, I think they have tried to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, the test really is whether what they have said can convince voters enough for them to cast their ballot for them.
And they're trying to say things that resonate with the voters. I mean, we've heard many interesting analogies.
I guess no
We
placards
just heard
today.
about the chicken wing and the whole chicken, what do you think? Should we just already? But these analogies, I mean, do they resonate with people, or should we just forget about this? Is it just further messing up the situation?
I think it feels more like a meme in the making rather than anything else. I think these methods, this kind of analogy, maybe it will help to a certain extent make the story, much more convincing to voters. But I think at the end of the day, right, voters are going to look at who are doing the
Mediacorp
talking
8,
at the end of the day.
microphone,
Because
interview,
there will be people and there will be individuals
spotlights.
that can make saying that make statements to say that the GST isn't going to hurt that much. But are you the one who's living through this on a daily basis? Because if you can afford it, what's the 9% GST as compared to someone who might be struggling with that 9% GST? So it all depends on who is making that speech.
It's very personal to the owner, right? So exactly how you live the experience, then matter how they can decide on the GST. So it affects them directly, and so the thing will be laying on their minds when they go to that class.
And that will, of course, determine when they who they choose to go.
Spectator stand. And since I'll be here for hours on end, let me try to find where's the restroom.
access to the shopping centre.
Alright, restroom located. Hopefully.
Toilet is over there.
Oh, okay, thank you. Familiar ventilation windows of a toilet, changing room. And the water fountain is just next to it. I won't be needing a shower facility outside.
Is the difference. The difference is time.
Okay. Another exit to the venue.
Welcome back to our results show special for Singapore's general election. Let us go live now to Geraldine. Jay. Yes, I'm here at MOE Stadium where supporters of the People's Action Party are gathering to watch the results that will be announced live, of course, on CNA. Now, apart from the supporters that are dressed in white from head to toe, we're also seeing residents from around the area who are here to get a slice of the action. Now, we are expecting candidates from the PAP who are contesting in the western constituencies to arrive later tonight to greet supporters and, of course, wait for the official results to be released. This, of course, includes the constituency of West Coast Jurong West GRC, where the PAP team led by National Development Minister Desmond Lee is up against a Progress Singapore Party team led by Party Chairman Tan Cheng
I'm
Hock.
on the other end of the soccer pitch. Audio still sounds alright.
Live to Risha Matthew next. Risha, what do you have for us?
I'm Risha Matthew and I'm right here and things are heating up at the Hongkong coffee shop with supporters of the Workers' Party have started to gather, and you can hear all around here the excitement and the buzzing around me as drums are playing with the cheers, the chants that has been happening over the past hour or so as crowds trickle in to support the Workers' Party. Occasionally we do hear these chants, these shouts, and we also see cars honking in support of the Workers' Party.
Once again, I have to say this is not the official sport for supporters to gather, but it is one that is close to the hearts of the supporters, and that's because this has been the go-to for Workers' Party supporters since the time of
Grade A natural
So it is not
grass.
just a watch party for many of the supporters here, but it is something, a tradition that has been passed on from generations over the past
So it's gonna be squish squish.
And the sides of the road are safety first because
Fortunately,
up to ensure that the crowds do not spill over.
doesn't
onto
feel
the
like
street.
it has rained earlier today, so the field should be relatively dry.
So all in anticipation for tonight's results, but one thing is for sure, Hougang is wide awake and watching intently for the results tonight.
Yeah, thanks for that. Rachel, lots of buzz there at the Hougang area. Let's go over to Sabrina now. She is at one of the counting centres across the island.
Well, no supporters here at Nan Chiau High School, which is one of the 200 counting centres all across Singapore. But the excitement here is still palpable as we are eagerly waiting the arrival of buses that will be carrying ballot boxes from Sengkang GRC. As my colleague Rachel Matthew announced just now at Hougang, there's a lot of excitement. Everyone is tuning into the show. We've not yet caught sight of the buses, which will be entering into the school behind me. They will be carrying ballot boxes from several polling
Underground
stations
reporting
in the
in
Sengkang
progress.
area. Candidates from both the People's Action Party and Workers' Party are also permitted to enter into the counting centre and observe the unsealing of the ballot boxes and the counting of the votes to ensure that the process is going on smoothly. So far, we've not seen any candidates arrive at Nan Chiau High School, but that doesn't mean that they are not at several other counting centres that are also in the Sengkang GRC area. Of course, we are also eagerly awaiting for the sample count results, which will be likely released very soon, and we are keeping a close eye on that, as that will give us an early indication of where results are leading for a particular constituency. Once again, sample count results are not indicative of final results, but they will give us a good indication of where votes are swinging for a particular moment. For the final results, you'll have to stay with us for just a while longer. Based on past elections, results have been released from anywhere from 11 p.m. to around 4 a.m. in the morning. So it's shaping up to be an exciting night ahead of us. Stay with us and we'll bring you more when we have it.
Sabrina, thank you so much for that update. There was Sabrina on live at one of the counting centres. And so one of the big questions is, what happens after the polls close? Let's take a closer look. Now, ballot boxes are transported to about 200 counting centres across Singapore, where only the returning officer, counting agents and candidates can enter. Inside, counting agents first inspect the boxes to ensure they have not been tampered with. Now, to make sure counting machines are accurate, a pre-count test is done, witnessed by counting agents. The boxes are then unsealed and emptied. Ballot papers will be mixed before sorting begins. Now, a sample count is first taken, after which a machine is used to count batches of 100 ballots each time, and a second counting assistant verifies it with a separate machine. This continues until all are counted. After which, the number of votes candidates receive at that counting centre is announced by the assistant returning officer. But if the difference between the top two candidates is 2% or less, a recount will occur. Overseas votes will only be recounted if this affects the outcome, and invalid votes cast will not be counted. Invalid votes include ballot papers with more than one vote, or with visible markings that identify the voter. The final tally happens at each of the 9 principal counting centres, and the results announced by the returning officer. The ballot boxes are sealed, and their journey ends in a Supreme Court vault, where they are stored for 6 months and then destroyed.
Thanks, Angela. A quick update now on the counting process. At Bendemeer Primary School, the sealed ballot boxes are being moved to be ready to be tallied. The red and green tape for the polling centre is being torn down. The place transformed to a counting centre for 4 constituencies: Jalan Besar GRC, Tanjung Pagar GRC, Queenstown SMC, and Radin Mas SMC. Right, Judge, let's bring you back into our conversation again, and I want to talk a little bit about negative politics that we've been reading about in the headlines. Basically, we saw the WP launching sharp attacks on DP and Gan Kim Yong during their rallies. We have Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. He responded to those attacks, quote, by saying rather disappointing, and he said it was a cavalier and irresponsible approach towards the livelihood and well-being of all Singaporeans. Which is what Mr. Wong said. Pretty strong statement there. And of course, WP fired back saying that negative politics was in the PAP's DNA. So I just want to get your thoughts on that, perhaps starting with you first, Dr. Tan.
It's very interesting what has happened and transpired over the last couple of days during the campaigning days as well. I think what's important is that when it comes to the point of negative politics, it's rather rich coming from the PAP, I've got to say. all right? And well, they have been the mother of negative politics over many past general elections, accusations of who's a liar, and a lot of other incidents as well. So this time round, I think we need to go and really focus on who said what first. And for example, the issue of strangers coming into a particular constituency, who started that conversation first? It wasn't the opposition. So I think we need to go and focus again. When we talk about negative politics, have you really focused on what you have just mentioned? So, it's really interesting when we talk about negative politics and yet, who is saying all these things.
Dr. Mustafa, do you agree with what?
I think taking pot shots in election time, it's become sort of part of the election campaign. If you look at past elections, there has been a case as well. I think it's a question of what's acceptable negative politics and what is not, and also whether the negative part of the politics is, I suppose, balanced by the positive part of the politics as well. Right? So I think that's what we're seeing in the campaign. Perhaps there's some balancing out of the two, but I think for us not to expect negative politics in an election campaign, I think we are being slightly disingenuous.
But do you see that? How does that, backfire, or does it, what parts of it resonate with voters?
I think it depends. I mean, you would engage in such politics if you believe it gives you a political advantage. Right. And that would be across the different political parties. So I think we may be based on political experience, where to draw the line. But for you, engaging negative politics is part of the campaign strategy.
And some would argue, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, what is considered negative? So just saying you are a new face to the neighborhood, is that considered negative politics?
Yeah, I think that was a very good point over there. What would we consider as negative politics?
A pity I do not have a picnic mat.
Respect being the first and topmost priority. Then
or
are we
future.
then allowing that there's certain kind of respect amongst politicians? But I do agree with what Mustafa has also mentioned, right? This is politics. This is a campaign strategy. I mean, we have to be, realistic about it. Everyone wants a chance to win. And of course, this sort of politics gets through, but should it be encouraged?
Okay. It's an open question.
It's an open question.
And we'll leave that question. Maybe we'll come back to it later. We'll have more to talk about. But we do want to touch, because many issues have been touched on during this campaigning period. Race and religion was a sensitive one that became a flashpoint during the 9 days of election campaigning in Singapore.
In case you give up,
Judge with the highlights for us.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe,
Just
hit the
3 days
notification
into
button
the
to be informed of
hustings,
future
and Singapore
content.
authorities identified
And I
blocked
hope you
online
found
posts
this
that
local
urged
affairs to be
Singaporeans to vote on racial and religious
satisfactory.
lines. They include this one from a former Singaporean now living in Australia, who said he had met the opposition Workers' Party and presented a list of demands in exchange for Malay Muslim votes. The government condemned what it calls identity politics.
Identity politics means candidates and MPs appealing for support on the basis of race or religion and championing the interest of that particular group over other groups and over everything else. No one wins when this happens.
Opposition parties wasted no time backing the Prime Minister on this matter.
I'm so sorry we don't operate this way. And that's not how we can work in a multiracial society.
I'm sure Singaporeans are not so stupid. They want to see value, and the value has to be presented by us.
Singaporeans need to be aware, not to be influenced by any foreign elements.
In Tampines, where according to latest population census, the proportion of Malays is higher than the national average. The showdown was framed between two high-profile minority candidates, facing off each other. The ruling People's Action Party's Minister in charge of Muslim Affairs, Massago Zulkifli, and the opposition Workers' Party, Faisal Manap. But both men deflected that assumption.
It's more of a team versus another team. So I don't see myself as going against Massago.
We live together in our unique way, multiracial, multi-religious, regardless of language, race or religion. And even as we advance the interests or listen to the concerns of our own community.
Fiery speeches from rallies ignited an unwelcomed racial slur from one opposition candidate to her fellow teammate.
This ignorance is a byproduct of privilege.
Any one of us with Indian or Malay friends will know, growing up in Singapore, that it's not okay to use the K word.
I have been consulted by my party colleagues, and I'm deeply sorry for what I have said.
And midway through the hustings, there was even a police report filed over online remarks labeled as racist and sexist.
I filed a police report, not because I seek sympathy, but because this is bigger
The K word.
It's about the kind of Singapore we are building for our children.
Investigations into that report are ongoing.
Okay, gentlemen, let's begin back to the conversation. I mean, this one is a sensitive issue. They've all come up to say, all the parties say, no, we're going to engage in this. Yet, at the rallies, you see other things happen. What do you make of what's happened during the campaign this year? Dr. Mustafa?
I think the parties coming out to say that there is, we are not going to tolerate race and religion being used for political reasons. I think that's certainly not helpful. And that fits well for the maturing of our political landscape. Now, we have seen a couple of cases, at least one, where a racial slur was used, but the party has been swiftly coming out to issue an apology, and I think that helps to maintain the threat that we are on, which is that there is no place for race and religion to be used in politics, and Singapore being politicized. And I think, like I said, that's good for us when we do the campaign. And also, I think it's really important, much of this race and religion debates also come from external sources outside of Singapore. And that's also really important for us to push back and say the election is Singapore is a domestic affair for Singaporeans and for Singaporeans to decide. And I think all the political parties have taken that position, and I think it speaks well for each of those political parties.
We have the Saturdays contest, one of the key battlegrounds. We have both Sabus and Faisal Mana. I mean, they are prominent, Malay Muslim figures, right? Does this sort of intensify this whole identity-based voting, even if slightly? And I'm just wondering, how do you see both parties navigating online?
Unfortunately, the popular ground and the campaigns, I think that they focus a lot on the Muslim community, as well. And I think, looking at how the campaign has been structured so far, they have actually used Masados and Faisal Manaf as one of the key sort of anchor individuals in this particular election for Tampines. So I think come to the fore, it tends to highlight but unfortunately or fortunately tend to highlight a particular community more so in such a case.
So also keeping in mind that the proportion is high, 25%, but the bulk of the rest is still Chinese, and we shouldn't forget that there's also the other side of the equation.
Yes, I think if you look at Tampines, yes, there is a sizable number of Malay Muslims living there. I think the way the campaign has been rolled out is to focus on each and every voter, regardless of race and religion, and I think that's important to note. And also, I think it's also important for both, and it has been said by both the WP and the PAP, that we are going to focus on issues. Now, going back to identity politics, I think if you're just talking about identity per se, there is identity in the voting that we do, in the way that we run the elections. We cannot escape from that. The question really is when you take identity to the extremes, when it becomes politicized to the extent that it causes offense, that it can disrupt the social harmony that we have. I think that's where we have to draw the line.
So in this case, has it been politicized?
I don't think that it has been, specifically politicized to an extent. It is a dangerous, thing. Yeah, if we go any further and tend to overly focus on either race, religion, or even gender, for that matter. I think there were a few occasions, and I think we have seen, over the last couple of days, there were issues that were being raised up. But I think I think you brought up earlier, it's good that these political parties have actually come out to voice their disagreement to these sort of innuendos, these sort of remarks as well.
So I think by and large we can all agree that race, religion should not be mixed with politics. Right, we have some live updates now from Leong Waikit standing by. Waikit?
We have
That's right, I'm now at MOE Stadium, and here is where I'm tracking the performance as well as perhaps the presence of PAP candidates who are contesting in the eastern part of Singapore. And Steve, you are right about supporters filling in seats of stadiums as the night unfolds. In fact, as we speak, supporters as well as residents in the area are filling in the stadium seats here. The first group, of course, were members of the media. That was, we came at about 4 p.m. The second group were supporters and volunteers from the East Coast GRC pushing in PAP flags, pushing in posters of the East Coast slate candidates, as well as snacks like bread, nuts, as well as drinks. Earlier, Dr. Mustafa and Dr. Felix said that they are keeping a close watch on wards such as Punggol, Tampines and Sengkang. Well, these constituencies fall under my area. I'm looking at the eastern part of Singapore, and I'll have updates and give you updates when I have them. For now, back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, YK. We'll be eagerly anticipating that. I hope they offered you some of those drinks and nuts along the way as well. But we're going to cross over next to our other colleague, Deborah Wong. Deborah, over to you.
Well, I'm here at the PSP's headquarters in Bukit Timah. Now, the PSP is not hosting any official watch parties, but we're here together with other members of the media because we're told that candidates will be gathering here, walking through these doors to prepare for a press conference later tonight. Now, the stakes are high for the party because this is also founder Dr. Tan Cheng Bok's last election, and you know, all eyes are on the battleground of West Coast Jurong West GRC, where Dr. Tan's team narrowly lost to the PAP in 2020 in the former West Coast GRC. Now, 5 years on, they are contesting in PAP strongholds in the constituency, and you know, the redrawn boundaries they said have proven a tougher fight for them. They're also saying that they've called for policy debates which have not materialized. So they're also hoping that residents can judge them based on the policies that they've put forward, like universal minimum wage as well as affordable housing schemes. Will all that tip the scales in their favor? If not, what will that mean for the future of the party? We'll be keeping a very close watch on that. Back to you.
Thanks very much for that, Deborah. Let's go over to Serangoon Stadium now. Live pictures from there, the Assembly Centre for the main opposition Workers' Party. And it does seem like quite a number of people have already gathered. Cheers and chants.
Oh, they're seeing themselves on TV now, so that's why they're cheering, you know? I'm sure the crowd will build up over the night because WP is contesting 8 constituencies this general election.
From sealing, transporting, and now arriving at Nan Chiau High School, which is one of the counting centres around Singapore. Election officials are unboxing the ballot boxes in preparation for counting. Now, first, the papers will be mixed well, and a batch of 100 ballot papers randomly picked for the sample count. In the story we just aired on race and religion, we said that Noor Deros resides in Australia. This is actually incorrect. Noor Deros is Singaporean and is currently based in Malaysia. Apologies on that one. On that note, yeah.
It's time for another short break because there's so much happening, but don't go anywhere. We're going to keep you updated with our coverage of Singapore Votes 2025.
With lavender. Introducing sensorial therapy by Tiger Balm, a new range of lotions designed to help you balance your everyday.
At home, love is in the air, but the air you breathe is also full of pollutant, especially the formaldehyde. The new Deluxe Ambience All Air Clean with pure air technology helps to destroy formaldehyde inside your home into a harmless water vapor. Deluxe Ambience All Air Clean. Clean your air.
Experience the best of youthful vitality with Holistic Way Premium Gold Bio NMN.
Fuel cells boost energy and supports DNA repair. PQQ protects, stimulates cell growth and supports brain health. Rejuvenate with balance and redefine peak performance. Infused with pomegranate extract for that radiant, youthful glow. Ginseng and maca for extra endurance and stamina. Holistic Way Premium Gold Bio NMN. Vibrant vitality for the best of you. Because feeling great knows no age.
Wala po akong sinusunod na sukat mo eh. Bali, sa panlasa na lang po.
Discover a carinderia that's popular for its grilled meat.
Ay, mas comfort food ko ang
Experience the Makati Workers Budget Bite at a Jolly Jeep.
Kain po tayo.
And would you dare eat at this famous street?
Tinawag po siyang hepalin dahil it is short term for hepatitis.
Lunch with us, Sunday on CNA.
Pressed for time? Understand today's top stories fast. Dive deeper when you want. Go to cna.asia or download the app now.
Welcome back to our results show special for Singapore's general election. Now, the halted sale of income to German insurer Allianz last year was a hot topic this general election. The deal was endorsed by the Labour movement, but was eventually called off by the government after public outcry. Claudia Lim takes a look at the war of words during the hustings.
It all started with a jab from Workers' Party candidate Andre Lau at his Jalan Kayu opponent Ng Chee Meng, the PAP candidate and Labour chief who was also vying for the single-seat ward.
We were so lucky with the NTUC deal that it got blocked. We may not be so lucky again.
That triggered a week of back and forth on the issue. 2 days later, when asked by the media, Mr. Ng insisted the deal was made in good faith.
I've started a review to see exactly what we can do so that we can put ourselves in a better state to answer the needs of the business, which are real, and also the public feedback.
That evening, leader of the opposition Pritam Singh accused PAP Labour MPs of staying silent in Parliament on the deal.
Elected PAP MPs who champion NTUC, the union, and workers who represent them should fight hard in Parliament when NTUC issues are raised, particularly issues that Singaporeans are concerned about. Why were they silent?
The uproar continued online after former Income CEO wrote open letters seeking clarity from Mr. Ng and Deputy Prime Minister Gan Kim Yong, who is chair of Singapore's Central Bank. Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong then stepped in.
When we went for the legislation, Workers' Party abstained. So if it had been left to the Workers' Party as government,
I was there.
then the deal would have gone through because they didn't oppose it, right?
WP soon clarified their position on abstaining on the vote.
The WP did what any responsible opposition should do. Agree with the outcome, but not oppose the rushed legislation for the sake of opposing.
The party also pressed DPM Gan, again calling for him to respond. And at a walkabout the day after, DPM Gan said he was surprised that the Workers' Party raised questions on the deal at their rally instead of in Parliament last year.
If they did, were they not happy with the answer? If they were not happy with the answer, did they not raise it further? I think these are the questions probably only the Workers' Party can answer.
The Income Alliance deal has become a focal point not just in the contest for Jalan Kayu SMC, it also reinforces the Workers' Party's key messaging of pushing for more opposition in Parliament. It remains to be seen how this could sway voters, especially as they consider the wider impact on Singapore's politics.
Okay, let's pick up from that. Let's talk about this Income Alliance kerfuffle, and to what extent do you think that's going to impact Ng Chee Meng's credibility, considering the fact that in Jalan Kayu and the WP has been really zeroing in on this issue? Dr. Mustafa?
The hope for WP is that it would sway the minds of voters, but I'm not so sure. I think the war of words between the WP and the PAP on this particular issue. It's a question of whether it has educated the voter, has the voter become more informed about this saga, or that it's just one of the things that is part of the campaign that's taking place. And I think probably the main reason it has been brought up is because it is a straight fight between the PAP and the WP in Jalan Kayu, where Mr. Ng Chee Meng is the Secretary General of NTUC. I think that's the reason why it has been brought up to this extent. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think it's really going to sway the minds of voters. I think they will probably vote on other issues, particularly in Jalan Kayu.
Okay, so because there was quite a lot of he said, she said kind of thing, you said that, but you didn't say this. So, Dr. Tan, will that affect Ng Chee Meng's chances in Jalan Kayu?
I think there are a lot of things that we are not, privy to, during the NTUC Alliance income kind of a discussion as well in Parliament. That's one. Secondly, also, how many of the voters are really truly, interested in this particular saga? Because it was sort of like not talked about. It was just stopped almost immediately in Parliament as well. The decision was done.
So to cut you in there, Jalan Kayu, there are a lot of young voters there. So you don't think this Income Alliance saga, that they're gonna,
does it resonate?
Yeah. The young voters
don't ask difficult questions that cannot be answered.
But will that swing their votes? Because I think at the end of the day, young voters are going to look at very domestic issues such as the rising cost, housing, all these issues. They are more important than
Income Alliance.
So this is not a local issue. As personal to the voter as the other issues, as Dr. Felix Nair has mentioned. I think that's the reason. Those are the factors that may weigh in the minds of voters when they cast their ballot.
So in a way, they know of the issue, but it doesn't really mean anything to me on a day-to-day basis.
It doesn't. They may read up more about it, find out more about what the debates were during Parliament. But as Dr. Tan has mentioned, it's really about the bread and butter issues that's very personal to the voter and impacts them.
Maybe they just won't buy directly income insurance for a while. Hold back and wait.
Because there was a bit of chatter, on the ground that because Assembly, we heard there, he basically publicly defended Mr. Ng, saying that he's not to be blamed, and then we have Mr. Ng apologizing. Just a day or two later, you see. So people are saying, if you're not at fault, why do you apologize? So it's a bit confusing there. And then there are questions about, is it about PAP's communication strategy, or is that going to confuse voters? You have any thoughts on that?
I think it's not so much about confusing the voters over there, but I think younger voters are going to weigh the pros and cons about this particular issue. On what you rightly pointed out, on one hand, Ng Chee Meng has apologized, but then on the other hand, Assembly has also come out to go and defend the decisions being made. I think all sides, we have to look at all sides of this situation and not just take one side. And I think young voters are a little bit more understanding in that sense, is that they will really dig deeper into it and not just jump to a conclusion. And let's just hope that that's the case.
Is this young voter segment going to be a game changer for this election? Because as you say, the way they're looking at things, the way they're looking at the issues, they have a different view of, I don't just vote for the party that will get it sorted in that sense.
They are discerning, they're perceptive, they're sophisticated, and they're certainly heterogeneous as well. So we cannot box all the young people in one category. It's very difficult to do that. And so they will really need to weigh all the different issues and then make that determination accordingly. But I think they will certainly be game changers, they will certainly be kingmakers in this election, and particularly in those constituencies where there is a considerable number of young voters. And also first-time voters, particularly.
Yes, many first-time voters this time around. All right, gentlemen, thank you for that. We'll come back to more discussion in a bit, but now time for us to cross over to our colleague Tan Zhi-Hui. Zhi-Hui, over to you.
Well, there's a handful of supporters from the Singapore Democratic Party here at MOE Stadium. They're eagerly waiting for the arrival of Secretary General Dr. Chee Soon-Juan, as well as Chairman of the SDP, Dr. Paul Tambaya, to arrive here. And of course, they're eagerly awaiting the results. Now, they're putting up a strong northern strategy here by the SDP. Well, we're going to wait for results at Bukit Panjang SMC. That's where Dr. Paul Tambaya is contesting. We're also waiting for more results from Sembawang West SMC. That's where Dr. Chi is contesting. It is a newly crafted SMC. Now, we're also waiting for results from Marsden UT GRC. That's where one of the youngest candidates of the GE is contesting, Mr. Arfin Shah. And we're also going to be hearing from Sembawang GRC, where there will be a 3-cornered fight. And of course, the biggest questions for SDP is, will Dr. Chee Soon-juan finally win a seat at Parliament? And will Dr. Paul Tambaya improve from his results from the previous general election, where he had a thin vote margin? So all of the SDP results we will be tracking here at MOE Stadium. Thanks for that. Sugui, polls have closed. It's already been an hour. Sample counts are expected.
And now to show you the behind the scenes.
Let's go over to Nadira Zaidi.
Hi, that's right. So I'm here at Chongfu School training RDU Secretary General, Mr. Ravi Philemon. This is a principal counting center for a few constituencies, including Nisu GRC, which is the constituency that Mr. Ravi is contesting. Now, just a few minutes ago at 9 p.m., we saw the ballot box arrive here at Chongfu School.
Behind the scenes.
7:30 p.m., 30 minutes before polls closed, we saw Mr. Ravi arriving normally in his car. No sign of the PAP Nisu team here as of yet. And as you can see behind me, it is pretty quiet here. There are no supporters.
In front of the scenes.
From what I was told from the RDU side, the supporters as well as volunteers have also been dubbing up as polling and counting agents. So as of now, we're just waiting patiently for the sample count to come in. And once it's in, hopefully we'll get to hear the thoughts of Mr. Ravi. Back to you in the studio.
Right, thanks a lot for those updates. We're giving you some live pictures now from Bukit Gombak Stadium, one of the assembly centers for the ruling People's Action Party.
Pretty packed. From what we can see, a lot of white shirts, chanting and cheering.
I think the crowd slowly building up as the night progresses, because as we know, for the longer the night proceeds, the closer we are to the results. So that's something we're all eagerly anticipating.
We've got Elizabeth Neo. She has been tracking developments on social media. So Liz, what's the latest? Yeah, thanks for that, Toby and Steve. I've been tracking how parties utilize social media this election. So physical rallies, they may be back with GE, but parties are still going digital. Social media platforms, they continue to dominate, continuing the so-called internet election of 2020, when COVID-19 forced parties to pivot online. So Facebook, Instagram, they remain key platforms, while TikTok has become a new battleground. Let's take a look. So between the 15th of April and the 1st of May, that is when Parliament was dissolved, right until the last day of campaigning, the People's Action Party posted over 240 times on Facebook, slightly more than its 220 posts back in GE 2020. But despite the volume then, the PAP's engagement rate was lower than the Workers' Party. Now in 2020, Workers' Party posted 120 times on Facebook, and that earned them over 500,000 interactions. This year, WP made more than 220 posts on Facebook. Now, as for Progress Singapore Party, the Singapore Democratic Party and Red Dot United, they continue to be active users of the platform, although they were posting at a much slower rate. Taking you over to Instagram, the PAP doubled its postings to more than 200 this election, from some 110 posts back in GE 2020, while the WP tripled its activity on the platform to some 130 posts from about 40 in GE 2020. But the SDP, now once the most active party on Instagram with some 130 posts back in 2020, has slowed some to about 70 posts this election. YouTube use, now that has been pretty mixed this election. It was once a hot spot for the Progress Singapore Party and the PAP back in 2020, but activity has since dropped off, with both parties dramatically scaling back from the 140 videos posted then. Meantime, WP has actually increased, in fact doubled its videos on YouTube. The SDP has in fact not posted on the platform at all during this period. The RDU, they released just one video during this election period.
And Twitter, now known as X, has largely faded from the political scene. Most parties, they have gone quiet, with TikTok taking its place. Now, the PAP joined TikTok in 2024 and they've posted daily since April. WP, PSP, they've also ramped up their presence on the app and they've been especially active in recent weeks. Let's take a look.
Reddit? Where's
And
Hardware Zone?
Podcasts, they've also been rising in popularity as a platform for parties to get their message across through candid and longer chats. So candidates, we've seen them appear on platforms like the Daily Catch Up and Yalabat to talk about policies and engage voters. So while the online battleground is clearly here to stay, the real challenge now is where voters tune in and how effectively parties can get their message across. And what is a general election without some viral moments? So we looked left, looked right, and found quite a few that will probably live on the internet forever. And kick things off with a song that started it all.
I look left, look right, for a career path. Is this a request considered too high?
The People's Power Party's Samuel Lee, singing for his supper, or rather votes, the 33-year-old introduced himself with his rendition of the Chinese song I'm Just a Little Bird by Taiwanese singer Chao Chuan to convey Singaporean struggles finding jobs, and that prompted a response from the People's Action Party's Gan Kim Yong.
To grow our economy, I look down to keep our household costs low. I look ahead to prepare for the future.
The Deputy Prime Minister piped in with his own wordplay to say he's looking out for Singapore's future in this video posted on Instagram. At the parties, they also found ways to jazz up their introductions.
To keep our household costs low.
Red Dot United's Ravi Philemon gave his version of the hit song by Blackpink's Rosé and Bruno Mars and a Hokkien tune as he unveiled the party's slate of candidates contesting Nee Soon GRC.
我的心里只有你，没有他。你要相信我的情意并不假。
Progress Singapore Party's candidate for Marymount SMC, Jeffrey Koo,
I
also
can't even
serenaded
sing as
voters
good
with
as
a
them.
Chinese folk song.
I should be ashamed of
Loosely
myself.
translated, he's telling Singaporeans, "You are the only one in my heart." And when party chairman Tan Cheng Bok's birthday came along, there was more singing to be done. The party took the chance to celebrate his 85th birthday.
Happy birthday to
Now, mainstay of the hustings in multicultural, multiracial Singapore has always been to reach out to voters from different communities.
Vanakkam, Nanggal PAP Sengkang Ani candidates.
And of course, to keep it inclusive as well. It was definitely an interesting 9 days, to say the least, made more so by a couple of very special characters on the campaign trail.
Progress Singapore Party.
PSP candidate for Kebun Baru SMC Tony Tan with man's best friend and perhaps his new party member, his robot dog turning heads with the ability to walk, sit on its hind legs, beg, and even ask for votes. And speaking of pets, how about this supporter with her favorite friend at the Workers' Party's rally for Tampines GRC? What a moment to document. And that's our roundup of some of the moments from G 2025 making their rounds online, highlighting the evolving role of social media in Singapore's political landscape. That's all from me for now, but it's back to you in the studio.
Wow, I think Liz, thank you so much for that. We just need to
Just don't break out the song though.
We need to pause for a moment.
Okay, yes. Sorry, I didn't get that.
She's not getting it because of the dog in the last one.
Oh, right. Oh,
Lost
dear.
on you, Terry.
Sorry.
And yes, we are going to take another pause.
MC on stage.
Hello, hi everybody. Good
MC on
evening.
stage.
Good evening. I'm Jay. This is Jaslyn.
Yes, welcome to our Assembly Center. I'm sure all of you are as excited as us about the results.
It's all trickling in a little bit, as you can see on the screen as well. We're not going to say much for today. However, we would like to implore as much of you, especially those of you who are already in the stands here, made your way down this evening. And I know it's very difficult because this area there's no HDB, right? So we all made a very dedicated trip to come down here today. And we all thank you for that. Can we give yourselves at least a round of applause for the effort, please?
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, and hope you stay with us till the end.
It's going to be a long night.
Long night, yeah.
So can we also implore those of you who can and don't need the steps over there, maybe we all sit together as a group in the center, because at least you can also see the screen and watch what CNA is presenting to you for the rest of this evening.
Yeah, treat it like a picnic. Yeah, come over and join us.
So once again, there is more than enough space in the center. Find a nice spot, sit yourselves down, make some new friends perhaps, but be careful of safety as well. Don't get into any fights, don't get into any arguments. We are all here for the same purpose, please. And we will share more with you later on as we wait for the results as well as the candidates who are on their way here. Okay?
And while you're waiting, we have some merchandise that's on sale.
Buy our merch.
Yeah, we have some merchandise, and today we are actually giving some special offer. You can, for those who wants to find out more, can go to our friendly volunteers, change maker over there.
So the merchandise booth is over there. There will be change makers and volunteers who will handle those requests. Meanwhile, sit tight, relax, and we'll see you in a short while.
See you later.
To our results show special for Singapore's general election, and who do we have here?
Well, Steve is on a break, so you have me for company for now, I'll tell you, but he'll be back. Don't worry, you'll see Steve again very soon.
That's right, if you're just joining us, we are indeed waiting for the Elections Department to release the first sample counts. Now, these will provide an early indication of the election results for all 32 contested constituencies. But remember, these are just sample counts and they are not conclusive of the final results. And for that, we will have to wait for the official word from the Elections Department.
Now, as global trade tensions rise under the US President Donald Trump's tariffs, the government has made navigating these challenges central to its campaign. Prime Minister Lawrence Wong and the Trade and Industry Minister Gan Kim Yong are leading the charge, but opposition parties have questioned their response, making tariffs a key political test for Singapore's future.
Task Force Man.
On the final day of campaigning before Saturday's general election, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong made a direct appeal to voters. Speaking at the May Day rally, he urged Singaporeans to re-elect all members of his cabinet, warning that the country is entering a more volatile era.
We must expect more pressure on us. And to navigate these pressures, it will take experience and skill. It will take people in government who have built up trust and close relationships with their counterparts in both America and China.
Mr. Wong warned that US tariffs show the world has changed and Singapore must adapt or risk recession. He said keeping his team intact is key to weathering the storm. At the heart of the government's response is Trade and Industry Minister Gan Kim Yong. Appointed to lead a task force on Trump's tariffs, Mr. Gan became central to the PAP's economic strategy. Staying active in diplomacy even during the campaign, he held a call with US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick.
I explained to Secretary Lutnick the nature of the bilateral trade and business between Singapore and the US. He understood and he emphasized that Singapore is a very important trading partner and economic partner, and he said that, emphasized that he trusts Singapore. That is, America trusts Singapore.
But not everyone is convinced of Mr. Gan's centrality. The Workers' Party has questioned his role and the timing of his entry into the campaign. Mr. Gan was a late addition to the PAP slate in Punggol GRC, one of the most contested new wards. At a rally, WP Chief Pritam Singh cast doubt on whether Mr. Gan is truly as critical to the government's plans as the PAP claims.
Could it be that he was ready to retire and did not plan to run in these elections? If so, can he be so critical to the PM's plans? You mean the PM has no one else in his cabinet that can negotiate with the United States on tariffs?
The PAP has pushed back hard. PM Lawrence Wong called Gan Kim Yong his task force man, trusted in the COVID-19 crisis, and now leading efforts to navigate a more turbulent global economy.
All right, so gentlemen, a lot of attention on the MTI Minister Gan Kim Yong, and a number of PAP leaders, came out to say over campaigning that he basically is indispensable and it would be a catastrophic loss if indeed he lost Punggol. I mean, I'm wondering, has that message struck a chord with voters, and do you think personally as well, from a professional perspective, that Gan Kim Yong is irreplaceable? Mustafa, maybe we can start with you, Dr. Mustafa.
I think it's the reason he has, the Prime Minister in particular, has brought this up is because prior to the election as well, the PM Gan has been handling the trade industry portfolio, and we had these Trump tariffs looming globally. So he has come in the defense of the PM Gan, and also to emphasize the importance of him being in his cabinet. So I think that's what we can read from what the PM has said. But as far as the Trump tariffs are concerned, the elections in Singapore are a domestic affair, but it's not immune from global challenges. So I think it's about underscoring the importance to the voter of what's happening globally. Now, whether that translates into how they vote, it remains to be seen. But it's important to bring out to emphasize the reality that's taking place, so that the voters can make an informed choice when they go to the ballot box.
So I guess, some of the questions that's been, raised is the fact that if Mr. Gan, he is an electoral asset for the PAP, then why not keep him at Choa Chu Kang? I mean, he's been there for so long. Why do you want to put him at Tampines, which is a key battleground, and one which he may, Punggol, that he might even lose. We don't know that yet.
I think this is a repeat of 2020 general election, where they actually, put DPM Heng Swee Keat into East Coast GRC to go and shift, to recalibrate the votes. And I think this is what one of the strategy that PAP is doing over in Punggol GRC as well, to keep a very important key player in Singapore's economy, growth, and a driving force, in this negotiation as well with the US, in the midst of the tariffs. But I think one thing to be clear, and I do agree with you as well, that the tariffs, while it is very important and realistically speaking, it will affect Singapore at some point. But Singapore is going to be a collateral damage. We are at the lower end of it, but there are other repercussions as well. So it's important. But again, will voters be enticed by this argument that the tariffs will be more important than domestic issues?
But it begs the question, because if he really is so important to the ruling party and, for Singapore's, if you like, economic survival as it fights, Trump tariffs, why not put him in a safer seat? Why not put him, anchoring in a seat which is a traditional PAP stronghold? They would know that the Workers' Party has been working.
Don't ask difficult questions you can't answer.
This puts the voters in a very difficult position, because if they vote against DPM Gan Kim Yong, that means they'll get rid of the chief negotiator, the task force man, as PM Lawrence Wong has said. So it puts the voter to go and make a decision, a very concerted, a decision that they have to make, and really think about it, a very discerning vote.
So you're saying it might upset the voters, sort of being a bit of a pseudo threat?
Don't ask difficult questions.
I would say it's more of a dilemma
Smile and wave.
for the voters that have
Smile
to be
and wave.
confronted with this. But I suppose it also begs the question of, whether this political gamble will pay off. It is of course a political strategy as much as it is I think rightfully so an important member of his cabinet. Right. But we are in the midst of an election, and so it is a political decision that was made. Right. And now it's in the hands of the voters in Punggol to decide
It's
how
your
they are going,
hands.
which sort of dilemma they are going
Punggol
to.
GRC.
Gentlemen, hold
Your
that thought.
hands.
We are going to cross live now to Amsha Olive.
Well, Arnold, I'm stationed just outside St. Andrew's Junior College, one of many counting centres for tonight's proceedings, and it's also where the People's Alliance for Reform Chief Lim Tian is currently at. He's observing the counting process, the counting proceedings. He told me he'll be visiting a few counting centres over the next 1 to 1.5 hours before making his way to a neighbouring coffee shop where the PAR supporters and candidates are gathered. Some of the candidates and supporters have been there since 6 in the evening. They had dinner together, and I spoke to some of them, and they said they are in good spirits and they are looking forward to the results tonight. Of course, we know that the PAR has fielded 13 candidates across 6 constituencies, including Tanjung Pagar and Jalan Besar GRC. Of course, Mr. Lim himself is in the three-cornered fight in Potong Pasir SMC up against candidates from the People's Action Party and the Singapore People's Party. Of course, we'll have the reactions from Mr. Lim and his team right here. Back to you.
Thanks for that. Alice, let's go over to Afifa Arifin now, where she's among the WP supporters.
That's right. It's now past nearly 9:30 p.m. Here at Serangoon Stadium, where the Workers' Party supporters are gathered. And the crowd is slowly but steadily streaming in. And that's because the party has officially told them to only arrive here at the stadium at about 10 p.m. onwards. So it's pretty quiet still, not as lively as the scenes that we just saw at that coffee shop in Block 322 in Hougang, where it's a stronghold and the unofficial gathering point for many of the Workers' Party supporters. But we are expecting many of them to slowly stream in here. We already can see some of the early supporters trying to get that front row seat here. All their eyes are locked in on that screen in front of us, showing the CNA live stream, cheering whenever they see any of the Workers' Party candidates or even themselves on screen right now. I understand that the 26 Workers' Party candidates are all at their respective counting stations in the northeast and eastern areas of Singapore, across 5 GRCs and 3 SMCs. Can already hear the crowd chanting Workers' Party right now, and I am told that all of the candidates will be arriving here later tonight. So all eyes here, locked on the screen, watching the latest developments. We'll bring you the updates, but for now it's back to you.
Afifa, thank you very much. We are now crossing live to Bedok Stadium, one of 3 assembly centres for the ruling People's Action Party, and as you can tell, the crowd's starting to build up. Keep in mind that we're expecting sample count results anytime now. Based on the previous 2 elections, they came in from 9 onwards, and
once it comes, it's probably going to be fast and furious.
They're going to come fast and furious, and again in previous elections by 10:30 p.m. We sort of had a picture, a rough lay of the land, if you like, in terms of where the seats were likely to fall.
Yeah, so I think on that note, it's a good idea to go for a quick
Mr.
break now,
Jerry,
but don't
meet
go
Mrs.
away.
Mandarin.
We're going to keep up our coverage of Singapore Votes 2025.
And now for a commercial break. Hashtag not sponsored.
Experience the best of youthful vitality with Holistic Whey Premium Gold Bio NMN. Feel Glial cells boost energy and supports DNA repair. PQQ protects, stimulates cell growth, and supports brain health. Rejuvenate with balance and redefine peak performance. Infused with pomegranate extract for that radiant, youthful glow. Ginseng and maca for extra endurance and stamina. Holistic Way Premium Gold Bio NMN. Vibrant vitality for the best of you. Because feeling great knows no age.
That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change that
tune. Feel relaxed with lavender. Introducing Sensorial Therapy by Tiger Balm. A new range of lotions designed to help you balance your everyday.
More supporters with a steel chair.
And welcome back to our results show special for Singapore's general election.
If you're just joining us, we are waiting for the Elections Department to release the first sample counts. These will provide an early indication of the election results for all 32 contested constituencies. But remember, these are just sample counts and they are not conclusive of the final results. For that, we'll have to wait for the official word from the Elections Department. Now, at 90 new faces, the 2025 general election has seen the highest number of first-time candidates in recent years. Well, CNA highlights 4 of the young newcomers. Dr. Syed Harun Al-Habsi is part of the People's Action Party's slate contesting Nee Soon GRC. Now, the consultant psychiatrist is a former nominated member of parliament. He said he resigned and joined the PAP to serve Singaporeans better.
We promise to carry your voices forward, to protect your interests, and to ensure that no one is left behind. Because in Yishun, we are not just neighbors. In Yishun, we are family.
Michael Tung from the Workers' Party is the COO of a tech startup. The Harvard graduate started volunteering with the Workers' Party in 2011 when he was afraid of being seen in a blue shirt. Now he wears it proudly as one of the WP candidates for Tampines GRC.
I want a political system where issues can be raised early, openly, and constructively. One that has compassion and where Singaporeans see themselves reflected in it.
The Progress Singapore Party's Stephanie Tan is a first-time candidate contesting Pioneer SMC. After years of being a lawyer, she became a stay-at-home mom to care for her 2 daughters. Ms. Tan says being a parent helps her better connect with residents.
We need a diversity of voices in Parliament, and like SM Lee once said himself, nobody has a monopoly on good ideas. So we need more contestation of ideas in Parliament, which cannot happen unless we have more opposition MPs who are voted into Parliament.
Arifin Shah of the Singapore Democratic Party is one of the candidates contesting in Marsiling UT-GRC. He founded the alternative news site Wake Up Singapore when he was only 16. Now the 28-year-old legal executive is making his political debut.
You are not shortchanging yourself by voting for an SDP MP in Parliament. The government's programs will still go on. Your estate will be fine. Singapore will be fine. In fact, not just fine. You will be thriving, not just surviving.
Well, we can see a high caliber slate of new faces. Perhaps just very quickly, tell us who who's your favorite candidate? One from the ruling party and one from the opposition.
Wow. Okay. I think one from the ruling party, I think I might want to go and say to Elisa Chen. I think it was very interesting and how she told her story of how she went for, a tea session and then how she got incorporated into the PAP. So I think that was one interesting candidate from the PAP. But I think the other one would be from Workers' Party. I would say Andre Loh. I think, fighting all out against Ng Chee Meng in Jalan Kayu. A pretty strong character as well. I think he has great ideas. So interesting in these two. Yeah.
Dr. Mustafa, do you have any standouts?
I would rather make a broader point.
Yeah.
I think what really stood out for me in the election are the younger candidates across the different parties and what they are offering to Singaporeans, and the way they have been articulate, the way that they have been courageous, the way they have put themselves forward. I think all of that is praiseworthy.
I want to pick up on this point, Dr. Mustafa, and also Dr. Tan, the fact that there are so many new faces, first of all, but also the youngness, the Workers' Party fielding, the youngest slate of candidates, the youngest median age as well. What does this, tell the both of you? Maybe Dr. Tan, you can go first.
I think it's about them trying to reach out to the younger voters, because if we talk about younger voters in Singapore, it's all those that are below 45 at this point in time. So, and there are a lot more of the first-time voters as well. So they are maybe the new graduates or just getting a job. And of course, you have the young voters of those who are just newly weds and also starting a young family as well. So I think it's about reaching out to this crop of younger voters that might be your swing votes as well.
That's right, because PAP's slate, this is possibly the youngest slate since 2011. Average age is about 40 and a half years. We are also noticing more women this time around. In terms of the political calculus of this, is it because they're trying to build political capital, they're trying to make it more inclusive?
I think when it comes to female candidates, it's been rising steadily over the last couple of elections. I think, it started off small and there was some issues about trying to get female candidates on board because, their personal life will be, looked into very, very deeply as well. So I think more and more finding it, taking it forward and just say, okay, we can contribute in so many ways. And I think if you look at this slate of female candidates, they are very, very highly qualified individuals as well. So I think that's a good start.
I do have to point out it's only 25% at this time.
At this point in time, it's still small, but I think it's moving steadily increasing.
So which is the trend is there, and it's a good trend, I take it. Dr. Mustafa, sorry.
I was just going to talk about how, with the new faces, we're seeing their high, caliber candidates. Do you sense that, we see WP, for instance, the opposition attracting more, and is it because they have that brand name out there? The other parties are still trying to sort of struggle, a little trying to attract the young ones. Is it because they're seeing maybe WP, that's like the tier 1, and then, the PSP and SDP maybe tier 2?
That may well be the case, because I think what WP has done, it has blazed the trail with their parliamentary performance, and that may well have encouraged others to join the party. So, and I think that's why being in Parliament, having seats in Parliament, bodes well for the party, and also for the younger ones to join the party. And I think that's what we have seen with Workers' Party in the way, in terms of their recruitment policy, in terms of the younger candidates, and not just younger candidates by virtue of them being young, but being high caliber, and also being able to relate to the ground. It's not just having an impressive profile, but also being able to relate to the voters.
Which brings me, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm very curious about this. If you take a look at the candidates, right, for both the ruling party and the Workers' Party, very diverse, very highly qualified, but you see a lot of lawyers, you see a lot of businessmen, and for the PAP, you see a lot of ex-civil servants. Obviously, is that something that has worked, and is that something that you expect to see the ruling party continue to use as a strategy in terms of introducing new faces and harnessing, I suppose, their knowledge and potential?
I think clearly this is a strategy that all political parties are trying to achieve as well. If we look at Workers' Party, it's very much close to what the PAP is already doing. But I think what this entire thing actually reflects is Singapore's meritocracy. And I think if you look at voters and how the voting patterns will be like, it will be, voting for people with these sort of, achievements, the credibility, be they lawyers, engineers, the list goes on. So I think it's a reflection of how far we have come as a meritocratic society.
Right. Okay, we'll continue this conversation in a second. Well, 6 People's Action Party newcomers may be thrown straight into the deep end if elected into Parliament. Prime Minister Lawrence Wong has touted them as potential political office holders. While speaking at a lunchtime rally, Mr. Wong identified former Army Chief David Neo in Tampines GRC, ex-Agency for Integrated Care Chief Dinesh Vasudesh in East Coast GRC, and former civil servant Jeffrey Xiao in Choa Chu Kang GRC as part of the country's future leadership pool. The Prime Minister also pointed out West Coast Jurong West GRC candidate Dr. Hamid Razak as another newcomer with potential for political office. Home Affairs and Law Minister K. Shanmugam also highlighted 2 new faces on his Nee Soon GRC team, Dae Go Han Yen and Dr. Said Harun El Habshi.
So we have there. It's interesting. PAP, singling out these future potential political office holders based on those who are identified, right? I mean, does that matter to voters, Dr. Mustafa?
To a certain degree, yes, because you're voting for candidates that will be holding political office, and they will be your MPs as well. So to a certain degree, it may well weigh on their minds. But I think elections are far more sophisticated than that. And I think we'll go to other issues that would be more personal to the voter that ultimately decides for them on who they will want to vote for.
I mean, at the same time, having said that, PM Lawrence Wong also had 3 ministers, full ministers, retiring, and he had 3 senior ministers of state stepping down as well. Is this something you would expect, a new prime minister to do, every time they take office, to take over, the reins?
Well, I don't think this is necessarily what, one would expect, if you're taking over office. But I think, this also reflect on what PM Lawrence Wong have talked about, leadership renewal. And I think, given the time it's now and this general election, I think it's about also the timing of it all. And so, it emphasizes the point that there is a need for leadership renewal. If it's not now, then when? We don't want to wait for another elections before a new team is being announced, and that might be cutting too close as well.
But I think what is more surprising or unusual is, you have the veteran politicians stepping down, but you have 5 one-term MPs being dropped. So actually, what does that suggest? I mean, does it suggest that maybe GE 2020 the selection process didn't go so smoothly? What's your interpretation of that?
I think it's difficult to say, but I think usually you tend to have more than one term as an MP. So it was quite unusual for that to have taken place. But perhaps PM Wong has a certain blueprint on how he wants to take the country, and perhaps have a group in mind to be his part of his team. But I don't think it's a bad reflection or a negative reflection on those who are first term MPs. They could have stepped aside for a variety of reasons. But it is rather unusual for that to have taken place.
But it could be, I just want to press you a little bit, Dr. Mustafa. Sure. It could be because they didn't live up to expectations as well, right?
Well, that's possible as well. So it could be, as I say, a variety of reasons, personal or perhaps performance-wise.
It could have been personal. It could be a realignment of values and what they actually believe in as well. I mean, one term, it takes 5 years is quite some time for them to reassess what's really important and what's the priority in their lives as well.
Right.
Now, another big topic, leading up to, nomination day, and after that was the whole switcheroo, right? I mean, was the whole, we talked about abandonment, a jumping of constituencies and all of that. Let's talk about PAP's last minute switches. I mean, until the results are out, we don't know whether it's quite worth the trade-off as yet. But help us understand that. Is it possible that we could see, diminishing returns, with this switcheroo playbook?
It might not necessarily be, because if you look at East Coast in 2020 general election, the last minute switcheroo, when DPM Heng Swee Keat shifted over to East Coast, I think that got some results. The PAP kept its hold on East Coast, at least by a small margin as well.
Yeah, so that was quite surprising, because for DPM, not only was he DPM, he was also Prime Minister in waiting at that time. So, the fact that they sort of parachuted him there thinking that it was probably going to be a bigger win. That's trying to understand, you see. So they've done again the same thing with,
But this time around, DPM Gun is not likely going to be the Prime Minister. I think, well, we just got a new Prime Minister, so I mean, this is a fact, right? I think, but that shift over there, again, is sending the message to the voters, that he's important enough to be part of his cabinet. And so this last minute shift might make, political sense for PM Wong.
And the switch, I would suggest, normally is done with the rest of the team members in the GRC who are well known, who have worked the ground for some time as well. Am I right to say that? I mean, in general?
Yes, I mean, you don't want to change the entire team. Yeah. So you will have members of the team that are familiar with the constituency, and you may have someone coming from elsewhere. So I think these switcheroos and what we saw on the nomination day is part of the larger political calculation made by political parties. And in this case, we are talking about the ruling party. And it boils down to the question of whether that political gamble is going to pay off or not. Is it going to be a masterstroke, or is it going to be an unsuccessful attempt?
Yeah, I mean, the ruling party has, taken pains to say, I'm sort of retracing a bit to talk about Gan Kim Yong, the potential loss of a minister, but the opposition leader Pritam Singh is saying, look, he can be appointed, he can run a GLC, he can, do something in a capacity which makes him still useful. I mean, does he have a point there? I mean, do Singaporeans also realize this for the time? Mustafa, you seem ready to answer. Let's have you answer.
I think it's a difficult one, but I think the way that he's putting out the messaging is, of course, in the interest of his party. And I think that's how I think we should read what he has said. Certainly, it would resonate with a certain segment of the voting population, of what he is saying. And also, of course, he would say that because that's where the site of an intense contest is going to be, and DPM Gun is there and is, of course, defending his team. Right, so I think that's what we can read into it, and whether that message ultimately it's going to be effective, we will know in an hour or so time.
So I was curious to know, with this whole switcheroo, right? Do you think then the PAP sort of risked perhaps looking like it's reacting to the opposition, or rather than setting the terms of the contest?
It might look to some, voters, but this is a rather last-minute desperate move, because the shift is rather sudden. And again, we talk about a known entity in Pongo, for example. Well, Gan Kim Yong it's not that he's unknown, but his group of voters and residents have always been in Choa Chu Kang. Yeah. So the sudden shift over to Pongo, what does this imply? And voters are going to look deeper into it. It's like, what is the significance of this? Because it seems like the PAP can be is rather desperate to get their votes. And DPM Gan Kim Yong, well, I mean, he might not be known in Pongo specifically as to the residents because he hasn't really walked the ground, but he's a known entity in terms of since COVID task force. Right. So he's well known to Singaporeans by and large.
But it seems like being a known entity, I mean, it's still not quite a shoe-in because, Mr. Gan, he garnered 58% of the votes in Choa Chu Kang, and that was the last general election, even though when he was fronting the COVID task force.
It was a big drop, right?
Yeah, it was a big drop.
If I recall correctly.
Yeah, and that was against PSP as well, So what I'm trying to say is that we don't really know, all right? I mean, it's not a shoe-in.
As we mentioned earlier, I think it creates a dilemma among the voters in Pongo. And I think it may be a dual strategy here. One is, of course, DPM Gun being a very important member of PM Wong's team to send that message and the reality out there globally. And the other, of course, is the rest of the team. We should not forget that the rest of the team were part of the larger Pasir Ris Punggol, and the wards that from the Pasir Ris Punggol has become Punggol GRC. So essentially they are incumbent in those wards, right? So collectively as a team, I think that's the strategy. So the incumbency advantage coming from Pasir Ris Punggol for the rest of the team, and DPM Gun being an important member of PM Wong's team. But of course, for the Workers' Party, this is where they have to strategize and push back on it.
Exactly. I mean, the Workers' Party would be aware, that there's an established team there. I mean, apart from Gan Kim Yong, everyone else, like, Janil, Yasin Sherling, Yuan Ling, they would have known that they would still continue to be there. They were perhaps expecting, perhaps not expecting a minister to parachute in. but they decided to go with 4 new faces, all new. I mean, perhaps they worked the ground, and I'm not clear if how much they worked the ground and how aware, but the fact of the matter is they're brand new. So can you sort of like give us some insights into the thinking here? Is it a gamble on new faces, new ideas?
Well, the Workers' Parties don't really have much of a choice, does it? Because they are going into a new territory altogether again, just like what they did in Sengkang, when they in 2020. So I think in Punggol, GRC is the same thing as well. They are putting people there in there, and it's, well, one could say they are a team as well. You have Harpreet Singh, leading the team there. So it's quite a strong team in that sense. And like what Harpreet has said,
Alfredo, we have to stop you there. We are getting sample count and numbers coming through.
No, we're all very excited about the sample count, but bear in mind the sample count is not the final result.
71%
Potong Pasir SMC, the 3-cornered fight. The PAP LXU getting 71% of the sample count. Lim Tien from PAR getting 8%, and SPP's Williamson Lee getting 21% of the sample count.
Potong Pasir SMC.
We do have more results, I believe, coming in right now. This one for the Bukit Panjang SMC. PAP's Liang Eng Hua getting 62% of the sample count against SDP's Paul Tambaya with 38%.
Bukit Panjang SMC.
We have another one coming in, and that's Pioneer SMC. The PAP's Patrick Tay getting 66% of the sample count versus the PSP's Stephanie Tan with 34%. That's all I have for now. Back to the desk.
All right, gentlemen, the first 3 sample counts to come in for the night. Let's start with Pioneer because it's up there on the screen. Patrick Tay. Looks like a clear win for him at 66 to 34. Dr. Tan.
Well, I think in Pioneer, and I think this is Pioneer SMC, right? Yeah, Pioneer SMC. I think it's quite a straight fight between these 2 candidates, and I think it's still very much a PAP stronghold in this area. So I think for the PSP candidate to make inroads over there, it's going to be a huge challenge. But I just looking at this sample count, probably she might not lose her deposit.
Yeah, and it's pretty decent for a first timer. I mean, she's a new face, right? I mean, she's been former lawyer, and homemaker, So this perhaps could, she could take some consolation from that. Bearing in mind, again, these are sample count numbers. So in terms of Patrick Tay, I mean, what do you think? He's been around. From the last GE, for instance, he got 62% of the vote, and that was in a 3-cornered fight back in the same place. So in a sense, he has improved.
Yes, certainly based on the sample count, and he is a known figure there. He's the incumbent, and it's a PAP stronghold. But what's also interesting is how PSP has performed here, and I think it's not just not losing the deposit, but I think has done reasonably well. So I think there's something that PSP can take away with them once we know the final result. But it is a PAP stronghold, so no surprises there.
Okay. I mean, the other result which stood out before among the 3 was the Bukit Panjang result. I believe it was the PAP with 62% and Paul Tambaya from the SDP with the rest of the percentage. Hang on, just hold the thought. Geraldine Yap standing by live. Geraldine.
Right, so I'm not sure if you can hear behind me, but the supporters, they're in high spirits right now. In fact, right behind me are some of the PAP supporters for the PAP candidate in Pioneer SMC, Patrick Tay. They've been in high spirits the whole evening. And, the moment the results for the sample count went up on the big screens in the stadium, they were clapping, they were cheering, whistling, and I'm sure you can hear them right now. It's just...
Yes, we can hear you.
Cheers, chants of PAP, and I think given the numbers that we see in the sample count, it's very encouraging. It's quite indicative of a win for the PAP in these 3 single-member constituencies. So, I think they will be confident. They will be looking forward to the rest of the results that will be coming at night, throughout the night as well. But just loads of cheering, chants of PAP going on behind me. In high spirits, all of them. Back to you.
Right, thanks for that, Jerry. No surprise in high spirits. The first 3 sample counts that come in clearly with PAP leading the way by quite a margin. And perhaps let's just pick up from where we left off because we were talking about Bukit Panjang, which was Liang Eng-hwa versus Dr. Paul Tambaya. 62% to PAP, 38% to SDP. A bit of a surprise there because I think there was a lot of chatter that Dr. Tambaya was people expecting him to do better, in fact, from the previous GE where he got 46% of the votes.
Yes, it is a surprise here because we thought that this would be one of the SMCs that's going to be very close. And it doesn't seem so at the moment with the sample count. This could perhaps be attributed attributed to Mr. Liang Eng-hwa and how he has worked the ground there, being an effective campaigner. And I think for Professor Paul Tambaya, I think he has done remarkably well in terms of his campaign. And I think his message is actually quite effective. So it is quite a surprise there as to the sample count that we are witnessing at the moment. But I think I would attribute that really with Mr. Liang working the ground there, and the ground has taken to him.
Your thoughts, Dr. Tan?
Yeah, I think I do agree as well. I think Liang Eng-hwa probably has walked the ground and done his job over there very, very well, and the residents are rather happy with what he has done and what they have seen as well. I mean, it's a surprise that Professor Paul Tambaya has dropped in the sample count at this point in time because we still do not know what's the final count at this moment.
But leading up to this, I mean, there was a bit of drama with their teammate Jijin, right? Jijin, when she made those comments, sort of racist comments. Do you think that impacted the party as a whole? Because Dr. Chee Soon-juan, he had to come out and basically apologize to everybody, to the entire party. So do you think that could have impacted Professor Tambaya's chances here at Bukit Panjang?
I think there might be some, effect on Dr. Paul Tambaya in this particular, election. How SDP has performed, it's worrying as well from what one of the members has said. So I think that might have some trickle down effect. But I think at the end of the day, it's still a single seat in this area, so it's just between the two characters. So it reflects on how the voters are thinking and deciding.
Yeah, and I think Liang Eng-hwa made I don't want to say a big deal, but he talked a lot about continuation in terms of constituency projects, and that Paul Tambaya was being a bit naive to think that it would all be an autopilot if he were, to win the seat. But there you have it. So that is the first 3 sample counts right now. I believe it's 8-0 to the PAP in terms of seats, not confirmed at this point, but 5 from Marine Parade.
If you were counting, your word for it.
5 from Marine Parade, Bridal Heights, GRC, 1 each from these SMC. So it suggests that it's 8-0 at this point in time.
Yeah. So just to bring us back again to Dr. Paul Tambaya, I mean, he's obviously in the healthcare sector, epidemiologist, and he talked a lot about, how single-payer universal system, for instance, against, say, for instance, what the health minister, Mr. Ong Ye Kung, would talk about. And do you think that, to a certain extent, people are just not buying into what he is pitching?
I think there was a healthy exchange of ideas between Professor Paul Tambaya as well as the Minister Ong Ye Kung, whether in which side you agree on, but there was a healthy exchange of ideas. I think here it's not so much to do with the national conversation about those policies, but more about what's happening on the ground in Bukit Panjang. So I think what Mr. Liang has done is kept it as local as possible, and has kept it in terms of the issues that directly impact the residents in Bukit Panjang, and I think that's reflecting. I think that's being reflected in the sample count.
I mean, a point that was raised, Dr. Tan, by the Health Minister Ong Ye Kung, was that most Singaporeans are covered by the 3, if you like, subsidies. by MediShield Life, by MediSave. Most Singaporeans will be covered by these three programs. And it's the great unknown as far as the single payer, idea is concerned. Would that have been something that's important as well?
That would definitely be something very important, because we are so reliant on what the Singapore system and the policies that has been implemented as well. And there are Singaporeans that have benefited from this system. So I think that is a continuation. But I want to bring back to this whole idea of this discourse between Ong Ye Kang and Dr. Paul Tambaya. I think it's perhaps too high level for a lot of the voters to go and look into deeply, because you're talking at a different level. So I think, again, back to the voters itself, right, in this particular area, in Bukit Panjang, they would probably focus on whether do I have sheltered walkways, whether do I have a park, or are the amenities that good enough to
Hold that
1
thought.
second.
It's over to Kok Ying for more sample count numbers.
More sample counts to tell you about. Jurong Central SMC, the PAP's Xie Yao Chuan getting 81% of the sample count versus Red Dot United's Kalamanikam with 19% of the sample count. Let's have a look at another one. Bukit Gombak SMC, with Low Yan Ling getting 75% of the sample count versus the PSP getting 25%. I believe that's all we have right now. Oh no, sorry, we have one more coming in. Sembawang West SMC, PAP's getting 53% of the sample count, SDP's Dr. Chee Soon Juan getting 47%. Now this falls within sample count's margin of error, please bear that in mind. Do we have more results? I'm afraid that's all I have right now. Back to you, Des.
Thanks for that, Kok Ying. So again, I'm sure the PAP folks are quite happy, very happy in fact.
About Jurong Central and Bukit Gombak.
Jurong Central, Bukit Gombak, Sembawang West. Sembawang West. So this was one of the SMCs. We were thinking whether we know that Mr. Chee, he has been a veteran, and Police San there, trying to defend her seat, and she did. So you're not exactly surprised by that, are you?
I think definitely not that much of a surprise, but what I think I'm a surprise right now, again, is sample count 53 and 47. They are pretty close, because again, margin of errors. We do not know what's the final count, but at this point in time, one could say that it's very close because it might swing either way, but not that surprise, really. While it's in favor of the PAP at this juncture, I think, it seems that there are still quite a number of voters that are rooting for Dr. Chee Soon Juan. So I think that is also something that the PAP might want to look into.
Right. So, Dr. Mustafa, how much of this may be down to the fact that this is the only constituency of all that has no private housing? So I guess the concerns might be a little bit different from someone in Bukit Timah, in the Holland areas as well.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point that may well have attributed to the closeness that we see in Sembawang West. I think what is really intriguing here is that a lot of focus as far as SDP is concerned that their best chance would be in Bukit Panjang. But rather what we are looking at is in Sembawang West. It is within that margin that could potentially swing, and we'll have to see what the eventual result is. But it's also it's a new SMC, of course. It's carved up from Sembawang GRC, and Miss Police San is the incumbent in that ward, and maybe that's
we have to break more sample count numbers. Kok Ying, you've got the numbers for us.
Sample counts coming in fast and furious. Mountbatten SMC, the PAP's Gozuki getting 62% of the sample count against independent candidate Jeremy Tan with 38%. We have another result coming up. Queenstown SMC, PAP's Eric Chua getting 82% of sample count versus PAR's Mahabub Bacha with 18% of sample count. Let me see if there's... I'm afraid that's all I have for you right now. Back to you, Des.
Yeah, again, PAP, Mountbatten. We've got one more. Yep.
We do have one more result coming up for you. The first GRC sample count result. The PAP team led by Tan Si Ling getting 63% of the sample count versus the PSP team with 37%. Back to you, Des.
All right, gentlemen, let's start with Choa Chu Kang GRC. Tan Si Ling, the Manpower Minister, parachuted, to borrow a term from Marine Parade, into this particular GRC. He's done well, by all accounts, right? Would you agree, Dr. Mustafa, first of all?
And just to highlight as well, the last GE, Choa Chu Kang, they had 58% of the vote. So they've actually marked up sample count still, but still it seems like it's gone up.
Yes, I think so. It didn't make a difference that they changed the anchor ministers, and I think that could be attributed also to the rest of the team playing their part in ensuring that they get the voting required for them to win, for the team to win the GRC. And also, of course, Dr. Tan Sin Leng is a minister, so he's a known figure as well, although he's from another GRC that has moved to Choa Chu Kang. So I think in totality, I think it's again not a surprising result, but I think we do see an increase in the percentage. And I think that's also telling us a little bit about all the other SMCs coming in as well. It's all increasing in terms of, particularly for those that have also been contested in 2020.
Right.
And that's also, I think, a message there as well that, there's a lot more support now for the PM than I think.
Right.
Perhaps we may have thought there's a lot closer.
The margin,
parties.
Sorry, Dr. Tan, the margin, would suggest that the PAP done exceptionally well, because not only did you have a minister, coming in who's relatively unknown in terms of the residents, you have two new faces as well in the form of Jeffrey Xiao, an ex-civil servant, and Chu Pei Ling, who's also a new face for the estate. So it does speak to the fact that the residents there have been very receptive, to the changes, and not as receptive, if you like, to the candidates from the PSP.
I think definitely. I think if you look at Choa Chu Kang GRC, it's a mature area, and it's also a PAP stronghold. And by bringing in Dr. Tan Sin Leng into this, is sending the message to the voters there that it's an important constituency for the PAP. And I think they have also mentioned that I think Jeffrey Xiao is a potential office holder as well.
Yeah.
So I think that is something that voters were really, really looking at as well.
Because we were talking about whether it matters to voters. You have potential political office holders, and Jeffrey Xiao there possibly becoming one down the road, who knows. But also interesting to point out that there are young voters from the Tengah area actually entering the scene in Choa Chu Kang, and for some they were saying the stakes in Choa Chu Kang GRC seems to be higher, but it looks like the strategy of pulling in Jeffrey Xiao and Chu Pei Ling in their 40s and 30s has worked in favor of the PAP strategy.
Absolutely, and we see that in the results. I think the voters have taken to the team, and and so the results speak for themselves.
And I want to bring us back to one of the results, Mountbatten. Because I know Dr. Tan there, you want to talk about independence. You didn't quite get a chance, but the good news is the independent, he's going to be keeping his deposit if things right. He's got 28%, I believe. 38%. There we go. Not too bad for an independent or self-styled Bitcoin specialist. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I want to go and give a shout out to
Seems like someone donated
in this particular election, and that is both for Jeremy Tan as well as Darryl Low, who's contesting in the Radin Mas constituency. So I think these two independent candidates are not one of those in the past where you had the Birdman or you had the Slipperman, all these rather dubious characters, running for Parliament. I think these two individuals are very strong and very strong credentials. Speaks very well.
Hold that thought, Felix. More numbers coming through. Copy.
More sample counts coming in right now. For our junior GRC, the WP stronghold, we have the team led by Pidam Singh getting 59% of sample count against the PAP's team with 41% of the sample count. We also have sample counts for Tampines Changkat SMC, the PAP's Desmond Chu getting 55% of the sample count against the Workers' Party's Kenneth Wu with 45%. We have one more result coming in, and that's for Yeo Chu Kang SMC, the PAP's Yip Wing getting 76% of the sample count versus Michael Fang from the PAR getting 24%. That's all I have for you right now. Yes.
Thank you very much for that, Kobe. So Yeo Chu Kang SMC there, 76% against the PAR. That is a big margin. Yeo Chu Kang, just a bit of background, was re-established in 2020 after being part of Ang Mo Kio GRC, and the PAP back then, fielded a first-time candidate who secured 61% of the vote. So,
we're looking at live pictures coming from Hokang at a coffee shop. Obviously, you can see the Workers' Party flag there being waved.
Probably cheering for the Aljunied results, right?
It has to be the cheering for the Aljunied win for the Workers' Party. Aljunied GRC remains in the hands of the Workers' Party. At this point, again, we need to remind you that this is based on a sample count result, not the final result, but the sample counts have proven to be reasonably accurate over the past two elections.
So Aljunied GRC, based on sample count, 59%, very similar to the last general election, which they got 59.95%. But bear in mind, I mean, this PAP slate is, they're all newbies except for Chan Hui Yu. So what do you make of the results?
I think, given what has happened over the last 5 years in Aljunied GRC with Leon Pereira leaving the scene as well, I think this one does reflect how the Workers' Party has still been able to get the support from the voters in Aljunied GRC. This also despite that part of Aljunied GRC has been carved out of this constituency after the lines were redrawn. So I think the voters are setting the signal that they still support the Workers' Party.
Right. Dr. Mustafa, is Aljunied now what Ang Mo Kio and what Marsden UT may be for the PAP? Do you think that's what we're seeing, and do you think it will remain in the hands of the Workers' Party for the time being and for time to come as well?
Absolutely. I think this has now become a WP stronghold, and we see this from the result. And it's more or less the same from the 2020 election results. And as Dr. Tan has mentioned as well, that there were difficulties confronting the Workers' Party in the course of 5 years. But despite that, they have been able to rise to the occasion and hold on to Aljunied, which is their prized entity.
Yeah. And do you get a sense, previously the PAP would be attacking the opposition parties on various issues, town council management, indiscretion, for example. Is that still a mainstay, or do you think it's become a bit more subtle and it's tapered off in the context of the 2025 election?
I would say it has tapered off.
Yeah.
I think they all have a shell life. Other issues may have come up. And I think that's what's going to be the thing now. So this is going to be WP's nerve center, Aljunied and Hougang. I think we're waiting for Hougang sample count, but I think it's fair to say that this will in all likelihood will remain with WP. So that would be the Eastern strategy.
Yeah, because there was some people, they were saying after nomination day that perhaps WP was being a bit cautious because Pritam, Sylvia, Jalgyam, they all stayed. Right, more sample count numbers coming through.
More sample counts from the elections department. Let's have a look. Punggol GRC, PAP team there getting 54% of the sample count. WP getting 46% of the sample count. This, of course, is a hotly contested GRC. We have more results coming in. Radin Mas SMC, three-corner fight there, but the PAP's Melvin Yong getting 69% of the sample count. Independent candidate Darryl Low getting 24%, and the PAR's Kumar Papu with 70% of the sample count. And we have one more result for you, the Marymount SMC. Let's take a look. PAP's Gan Xiaohuang getting 71% of the sample count against the PSP's Jeffrey Koo with 29% of the sample count. That's all I have for you now. Back to you, Dash.
All right, thanks for that, Kok Ling. Well, I mean, obviously we have to talk about Punggol, but before that, let's just pick up from this particular sample count from Marymount. Gan Xiaohuang 71%, Jeffrey Koo 29%. This basically was pretty much a shoo-in for the PAP, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think a lot of what we have seen so far has been a shoo-in for the PAP. And if you look at it, you look at the results, the sample counts at this point in time, I think, if we are talking about the vote share and a strong mandate for PM Lawrence Wong, he probably got it. I think, if you tally all of that against sample counts only, I think if so far, all right, he probably have achieved more than the 61% threshold.
Okay, but as it stands, I just want to clarify this. As it stands, the results are not really a surprise, and the close ones are still within the marginal error, right? Okay,
it's also between the PAP and the WP.
Right, exactly.
Okay, now we have to talk about Punggol. 54% to PAP, WP 46%. Looks like the gamble didn't quite pay off for WP.
Yeah, but it looks like a reflection of what happened in the East Coast as well, in 2020, where, Heng Swee Keat was in there, and it was about, in total, the final count was about 53%, I think, for the PAP. So in Punggol GRC, it's almost a similar repeat of the situation, where the voters there might not feel that they need a huge change. It's a new estate, and I think everyone is just pretty happy with what's going on and what the PAP has done. Remember, like what you mentioned earlier, there are some of those members, besides DPM Gan, that have been already in those wards. And so they are, a known entity there, and for the residents there, they know what the PAP has done.
I have to point out that this is an estate that is growing. I mean, right now it's got 121,000 voters. Because of new BTOs coming in, they're more along the way. So it's looks like it's going to be a young estate, but the youngest already, and it will continue to stay young. So I mean, what would the ruling party want to do, and what would the Workers' Party want to do in terms of, I guess, reaching out and I guess reacting to this particular development in the near future?
I think given how close it is, based on the sample count, it tells us that much work needs to be done. Whoever wins this particular GRC, they need to listen to what the voters are saying in Punggol as the estate continues to develop. It is one of the youngest towns. It also tells us that the younger vote in Punggol as well is not necessarily
Hang on a second,
going.
gentlemen. We have a sample count coming in. Kok Ying?
More sample counts here for you. We have Tanjong Pagar GRC with the PAP's team led by Chan Chun Sing with 81% of the sample count against the PARO's team with 19% of the sample count. We have one more result for you, and that is Bishan Toa Payoh GRC. The PAP team there also doing very well with 75% of the sample count against the SPP's 25%. Do we have? Oh yes, we do have more results coming in. Ang Mo Kio GRC led by PAP's Lee Hsien Loong with 79% of the sample count, commanding lead there against the PPP's 10% and SUP's 11%. Back to you.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Kok Ying. Well, no surprise there. I mean, Ang Mo Kio helmed by, Senior Minister Lee, 79%. Well, it looks like the other two parties, if that holds, might not be getting their deposits back. All in, PAP is faring very, very well. I guess this is, again, would you say, I mean, it's basically the voters have spoken. I mean, because earlier we saw what happened in Punggol there. We saw Ang Mo Kio 79%, earlier Tanjong Pagar 81%. Have we seen those numbers in recent elections?
Not 81.
Not 81, not 81.
It's in the 70s, yes, but it's not 81.
Tanjong Pagar. So as it stands, does it actually look, it's early hours, I know, but as it stands, you're talking about Prime Minister Wong receiving his mandate. Are these numbers bearing that out quite strongly? They are PAP strongholds, I have to point out, but the PAP, the ruling party, seems to have improved on those numbers in these so-called strongholds at the same time.
So it's not just status quo, it's also the margin of victory in each of those constituencies, and you can see that the numbers are quite remarkable. So I think that obviously we are looking at the other constituencies coming in as well, but that certainly points at this juncture for a healthy and strong mandate for the Prime Minister.
Just sort of picking up from Punggol. Actually, one of the key questions, I wanted to know is that Punggol is, to a certain extent, very important. Would you say that it's a bellwether for Singapore's political future? I mean, it's the youngest towns. We had a contest, right, between the veteran leaders and the fresh faces. So do you think the results there are actually hinting at what lies ahead for national politics?
I think it does reflect on what the PAP has done in that particular constituency. Will it be able to replicate the same kind of thing in the other constituency or newer estates coming forward in Singapore? I think this again is perhaps a mark of what's going to happen in the long term for the PAP. And I think it does bode well for the PAP. Given that they have at least achieved quite a decent vote share in the Punggol GRC. It's still new. It's still, things are still shifting. Like what you said, there are still, more BTOs being built in that area. You do not know in the next general election what's going to happen as well. Similarly to what in Sengkang.
Okay. All right. That's for Punggol GRC. Oops, hang on. Sample count coming in. Kogi?
We have more sample counts for you coming up right now. At Sengkang GRC, that was the biggest upset in G2020. The WP team, led by Herting Ru, getting 56% of the sample count against PAP's 44%. The only person from the losing team in 2020 was Lam Bin Min. And up next, we have Holland Bukit Timah GRC, a PAP stronghold led by Vivian Balakrishnan, getting 80% of the sample count against the Red Dot United's 20%. Another sample count here pointing to a very good night for the PAP. Do we have more results coming in? Yes, we do. Jurong East Bukit Batok GRC, the PAP team getting 76% of sample count against the Red Dot United's 24%. And we have a final result coming in. Oh, fortunately, that's all I have for you right now. Back to you, Desk.
Thank you for that. Right, so right now 2 wins for PAP based on the latest sample counts, Jurong East, Bukit Batok and Holland Bukit Timah. But let's talk about Jurong East Bukit Batok, 76%.
Talk about Sengkang GRC.
It seems like PAP is doing very well. They're getting the high 70s. Holland Bukit Timah was 80%. It's been a great outing. It feels for PAP. Again, sample counts. We are still waiting for the final results.
I think I want to point out one thing about who are contesting in this constituency. I think we have to look very closely at the political parties in these constituencies. And if you look at the one with Workers' Party, the results are really very close. But if you have the other political parties, the results are huge. The difference is really big by 80%, 76%, and they're very huge compared. So what does this signal for the smaller political parties? Are they, perhaps they might want to relook at their strategies again because they are competing against other bigger names in the opposition, basket. So I think if you look at that, I think we have to really consider who are these individual candidates or these individual parties contesting in the particular GRCs.
So, for example, Tanjong Pagar, where the PAP won 81%, the opposition was PAR, right? And then you had Bukit Timah, it was 75%, but it was SPP, right? So to your point,
sample count numbers coming our way. Kogi?
That's right, we have more sample counts. This is from Pasir Ris Changi GRC, a new GRC led by PAP's Indrani Raja getting 67% of the sample count against the SDA's 33%. This is the SDA's only team for this election. And we do have another result coming in. This is for Marsiling UT GRC sample count for PAP's team led by Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, his first outing as Prime Minister. 74% for him in his GRC, and SDP getting 26% of the sample count. We do have, no, that's all I have for you. Back to the desk.
Thanks a lot for that. Kogi, so Marsiling UT, let's look at those numbers. 74% to our Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong. His team has definitely done better. I mean, it's the same team he's kept. The last GE, they got 63%. So that's a clear mandate.
Isn't it? It is an improvement. And also it's in the 70s, so it is a remarkable result.
Okay.
I mean, it is the Prime Minister's constituency.
Understood. About to be a stronghold, I understand, and maybe perhaps get stronger, in the years ahead. But I do want to go back to Dr. Tan's point, Mustafa. I mean, do you agree it also is a function of the level of the opposition, and you can argue that the SDP team here in Marsiling UT, for example, perhaps wasn't as strong, and you can say the same thing for Tanjong Pagar GRC as well. And there are a number of them where the numbers were quite impressive, above 70%, but to your point, the opposition didn't seem that strong. Dr. Mustafa?
Yes, it does point to which party stands in those constituencies, absolutely, because when you look at the results, where it's between WP and the PAP, it's a lot closer than compared to the other constituencies where other parties are contesting. So it's going to be a question for those parties on to rethink their strategies on how they want to go about doing it and which constituencies they would want to contest in. But it does seem seem that right now it is moving towards if there are more seats that WP may win in subsequent elections, that's going to be more of a two-party.
So do they need to band together? I mean, just to pick up on this particular point, I mean, we talk about a party system, but as you rightly pointed out, it looks as though it's heading to a two-party system. Do they need to band together, cooperate more? They tried. I know they tried. They haven't had too much success. What's the big issue that's preventing them from doing something like that?
I think there's nothing preventing them. I think it's all about the constituencies they are contesting in. And they would have to have staying power in those constituencies to hope at some point they will be able to cause an upset. But it's not easy for the smaller party with the resources that they have. But I think they must be given credit in the sense that they, by contesting, despite perhaps knowing that they can.
We've got more sample count numbers.
We do have more breaking sample counts. Let's take a look at West Coast Jurong West GRC, anchored by Minister Desmond Lee. The PAP team getting 61% of the sample count against the PSP's 39%. The PSP's team has Dr. Tan Cheng Bock as the anchor and other A-listers from PSP, including Leong Man Wai and Hazel Phua. This is also probably Tan Cheng Bock's final outing. Do we have more results coming in? Okay. Well, this is the sample count for Kebun Baru SMC. The PAP's Henry Quek getting 66% of sample count against the PSP's Tony Tan with 34%. Tony Tan last competed in GE 2011. And I believe that's all I have for you right now. Back to the desk.
All right, so Kebun Baru SMC, again, I imagine both of you are not particularly surprised by this result for Henry Quek, 66%. I think we should talk about West Coast.
Yeah, West Coast GRC, wow, 61% Desmond Lee's team, and PSP held by Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, 39%. I mean, let's talk about those numbers.
Well, I think the numbers drop also for a few reasons. I think one of the reasons is that the electoral boundaries is not the West Coast GRC of 2020. I think we have to be clear about that. And it's like portion of the former Jurong GRC now being subsumed together with the West Coast GRC, part of West Coast GRC. And so you're incorporating perhaps PAP stronghold into this so-called halved of the West Coast GRC. So the numbers, not that surprising, but might be worrying for the PSP because that's how they got...
It's an all-in gamble for them, right?
Exactly.
They fielded their A team. We've got Tan Cheng Bock, Leong Man Wan, Hazel Phua. We might not see them in Parliament. Or...
I mean, PSP has gone all out, put their best team forward. But unfortunately, the results does not pan that out. Doesn't show the results for them. So it's going to be... the PSP party will have to look at what they're going to do going forward from this particular election. I think the party itself will continue. They will need to look at how they can rebrand themselves. They do a sort of reflection on the results that they have gotten from West Coast. And also, of course, just want to go back to the earlier point I made about the smaller parties, that they should be given credit for putting themselves forward despite knowing that perhaps they would lose, is that they give the voters an opportunity to cast their ballot. Otherwise, it would be a walkover. So it's good. What I think it would be good is for them not to lose their deposits. I think maybe a few the cases that I think they're going to retain their deposits, and I think it's good that happens.
Yeah, because Leong Man Wai, I mean, he did state actually that that the primary role of an MP is to debate national policies and not about focusing on local issues like estate management. How much of a damage do you think that might have had? When people go and vote, because estate management issues are quite important to most voters, right?
Especially municipal issues, right, which you are pointing to. Absolutely, I think that is a factor. But I think there are several other factors at play. I think it's a combination of factors that can tell us about that, best explains the results that we've seen in West Coast GRC. And as Dr. Tan has mentioned about the boundary changes, the reconfiguring of West Coast, I think that also had a part to play. And also there are newer faces in the PAP team as well, and they must have also been able to relate to the ground to get the result that we see. that we are seeing.
One thing that PSP did bring up, Dr. Tan, was that they accused Mr. Lee, Desmond Lee, of being silent on housing issues, which Mr. Lee, of course, refuted. I mean, do you think this conversation, played any part in the margin of victory at all for the PAP versus the PSP?
I think a lot of all this discussion, right, can be gathered from the Hansard. If voters really would want to go into details and see whether there has been debate in Parliament on this issue. So I think, Desmond Lee has actually made his point across, and voters are, well, as the results, the sample counts have shown, that the voters are, listening to what he has said and also agreeing to the point that there have been challenges when under his care, and this is the best that he has done. And I think, again, when it comes to Leong Man Wai and Hazel Powell's performance as NCMP in Parliament, I think that was also one of the considerations how voters might have felt when they want to give their vote to who in this.
And how would you describe his performance as an NCMP?
Well, sometimes we can say that Leong Man Wai might have a point that he's trying to put across. How he puts it across might not be the most professional way. Not that it was a wrong question, perhaps it's just the way that you deliver.
Okay.
There is some
unnecessarily aggressive, aggravating.
Correct. There's certain decorum.
So let's talk about Desmond Lee. I mean, we've talked about housing. Some people are happy, some people not so. But what do you think? What's the biggest impact that PAP's Desmond Lee's leadership has in terms of strengthening the party's chances?
Well, his role is pivotal. He's the anchor minister, so he leads the team by example. And I think that's what we have seen in West Coast, Jurong West. And I think as far as the PSP is concerned, of course, NCMP may not be offered to them this time. But I think they can take heart from the fact that they have continued to contest in a West Coast GRC despite being reconfigured. So I think the hope is that they will continue to stay there and continue to work the ground there and do better come the next election. Of course, now it's just a sample count. We should acknowledge that.
Right. Okay. All right. I just have a very quick question. I'm not a question, more of a statement here. I mean, Hamid Ramzak, potential POH for the PAP, I should say, at West Coast GRC, GRC as well. So I assume that the PAP would be very happy that not only the Desmond Lee retain a seat, but they have someone they can work on who will potentially lead the ruling party and the government as well.
Exactly. I think with all these new potential office holders, placed in these constituency, that will definitely signal something PAP to consider.
And about the rule,
I know we've been talking about West Coast Jurong West for quite a fair bit, but we didn't pick up earlier on what we talked about with Sengkang earlier, the sample counts. We haven't touched on that yet. Sengkang, with James and Tingru, 56%. 56%, not too bad. I think the last GE they got 52%.
It's a lot closer.
So yes, that's correct. So 56% WP, PAP 44%. So I mean, they've made. I mean, I guess it means that the voters or residents are happy with what they've been doing.
I think if you watch either on YouTube or one of the social media accounts, I think a lot of times we see how James have gone on the ground and the way that he carries himself on the ground and also meet the people session as well. There is a very personable, despite what has happened in Sengkang GRC because of the Raisa Khan saga. And I think the team itself has performed rather well, and I think Sengkang voters are saying that they trust in them, and I think that is it seems to be the message across so far in all the sample counts that we have seen as well. At the end of the day, it's about trust because voters are also voting with their conscience.
Indeed, and I mean, is it fair to say that they've retained this trust despite what happened with Raisa Khan, despite the fact that the opposition, that the Workers' Party leader was convicted of lying in Parliament before that committee, that he seems to be, he seems to be maybe Teflon Singh a little bit, Dr. Mustafa.
Yes, I think those issues did not really weigh on the minds of voters when they cast their ballot. In fact, they have given a higher percentage of votes to the WP in Sengkang compared to 2020 GE, and I think that speaks to their performance both on the ground as well as in Parliament.
Also, does that mean that right now WP, they have retained what they've had, status quo, trying to expand Northeast, Tampines, Punggol, not quite there yet with Punggol. So does that mean that voters are still not quite ready, or the residents in Punggol, for instance, to accept the WP, because even though they have been walking the grounds as well?
But I think in Punggol GRC is a little bit different because it's a very new estate over there and things are still developing as we speak. And over the next couple of years, then we'll really see the true form of what Punggol GRC will be like. And if you look at what the Workers' Party has done, is a new team, going into those wards. Never been seen before. The residents are probably very happy with what the PAP, the old team has done for them as well. And they are focused more on that. Do they want to ruffle feathers, by voting for the opposition? One does not really want to know, at this point. At this juncture, perhaps not.
Okay, so typically, how long would it take? So we know this seems to be the Workers' Party strategy, right? You have Okang, you have Aljunied, you have Sengkang, eyeing Tampines, eyeing Punggol. Results still in play. But how long before residents get comfortable? How long before residents say, okay, I'll give you a chance and I'm going to give you the vote?
Building up of trust. And I think it's walking on the ground as well, more often than just 9 days of campaigning.
Right.
And I think if the Workers' Party really want to make inroads into Punggol GRC, then it should continue meeting the residents over there.
As you were saying,
on the ground.
5 years is a long time.
5 years is a long time.
But I don't want to keep Arifin waiting, because she's now there at the Workers' Party grounds. Afifa? That's right, scenes of jubilation all around here at Serangoon Stadium, where the Workers' Party supporters are gathered. You can hear them cheering. This was what they were cheering, Workers' Party, when the sample counts came out for Aljunied GRC and Sengkang GRC. Now, in that sample count, which gives us an early indication, it shows that the Workers' Party is leading in Aljunied GRC at 59%, and that's a number that's very similar to what they won back in 2020. And similarly for Sengkang, 56%, that's 4% higher than the 52% that they secured back in 2020. Now, supporters here erupting in cheers, applause, waving their party flags and banners as well. Again, this is just a sample count, but it is a significant one for the Workers' Party because it shows that they are leading in the GRCs in which they are incumbent in. Now, again, this is the official sample count. We will be waiting for the official results to come out, and we'll bring you all the updates when we have them. Well, thanks a lot for that. FIFA Arifin speaking to us from Serangoon Stadium. So perhaps, I guess you perhaps could recap, a number of sample counts have come in. Just give us, some of the takeaways, the highlights, what are you most surprised by so far?
Well, I think for one, the number of votes that the PAP has garnered, 80%, 81%. I think if you look at Jurong's Central, Yao Quan's, 81%, Tanjong Pagar, 80%. I mean, these are very high percentages that we're talking of and looking at as well. And I think this does definitely, if all comes to the final count and that stays, it shows that the PAP will be getting a very, very strong mandate in both the number of seats in Parliament as well as the vote share. So that is something very surprising, because compared to what happened in 2020 and in the midst of a pandemic, it didn't translate into that.
That's an interesting point, Dr. Mustafa. When you go to rallies, you see the enthusiasm, for the opposition parties, for the Workers' Party in particular, but so far, as it stands, doesn't seem to translate. What happens, at the polling center, you think, when people kind of like, what am I going to do? Why is there an apparent disconnect? We saw it in 2020, and we seem to be seeing it initially anyway in 2025 as well.
Maybe you can describe them as a silent majority.
Yeah.
So they may not necessarily be very vocal out there, but they're still very informed, and then they make their decision accordingly. So that's why I think that's reflected in the results thus far. Of course, rallies has that charm to it, but it's not necessarily a reliable barometer when it comes to the voting count on how people will vote. But I think what we have seen thus far, I think the major takeaway is certainly this: the margin of victory, what the popular vote is going to be, and also. But at this point in time, status quo.
So talk about social media, right? Do you think maybe the ruling party has really upped their game, social media with singing? Oh, just before we get to that, we have Angela replacing Kok Eng for now with the latest sample count numbers.
All right, that's right. I'll tell you. Let's take a quick look at the sample count numbers coming in for Nee Soon GRC. The PAP team led by Law and Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam with 74% of the sample count against RDU's 26%. That's a big jump from the last election with 62% for the PAP then. Let's take a look at another sample count if we can. And this is for Jalan Kayu SMC, very closely watched, a very small margin here.
Jalan
the PAP's
Kayu
Ng Chin Ming with 52% of the sample count against Andre Low from Workers' Party with 48%. This is a very small margin, again falling between the margin of error possible between sample counts and the final result, which is up to 5%. So do take note of that as we go into the next sample count. Let's take a look at this one. This is Sembawang GRC, a three-cornered fight. The PAP with 67% against the NSP 2% and the SDP with 31%. Again, a strong lead for the PAP here, 67%. And I think that's all the sample counts we have for you at this point.
Thanks a lot for that, Angela. So let's kick things off with Sembawang first. We were just talking about social media, and actually, Mr. Ong Ye Kung is very active on social media. He's always posting videos, very savvy about his sports and all of that. So to a certain extent, do you think PAP has really upped their game in the social media sphere?
I think definitely, since the 2020 general election, they have upped their game. But I think, there are still, of course, room for improvement in certain areas as well. But by and large, they know where to target, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or even TikTok as well. So I think that given them that sort of opportunity to reach out to more people, more voters, especially younger voters as well, who likes all these sort of, ways of reaching out to to their candidates.
Okay, hold on a thought. We're going to reach out now to Olivia Seong standing by with the latest. Ollie?
Yes, we are here at the Yio Chu Kang Stadium, which is the assembly point for the ruling People's Action Party. It is here where you can see behind me supporters and some of the candidates that have contested in the central, north and south areas of Singapore have now gathered, and as the sample count results have come in, it was originally quite quiet and a relaxed mode, but as the results were announced and as people are watching it on a big screen right now, we have seen cheers erupt, as we have seen particularly the PAP pulling in more than 70% of the vote share in numerous constituencies for supporters here, including Marsiling UT, which is led by the PAP Secretary General, and Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, his team pulling 74% of the vote there. Ang Mo Kio GRC as well, led by Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong, pulling in 79% of the vote for the PAP. And we also see Bishan Toa Payoh, Marymount, Kebun Baru also getting more than 60 to 70% of the vote share. And we know that PM Wong is expected to arrive here at Yio Chu Kang Stadium to address supporters sometime later this evening. We will be keeping a lookout for that. But who we have seen already enter this stadium are several key members of PM Wong's 4G team. We saw Health Minister Ong Ye Kung make his way in, and as he entered, he was greeted with cheers as he waved and shook hands with supporters who have gathered here. I asked him particularly about the sample poll result for Sembawang West SMC, and he had thrown his weight behind the PAP candidate there, Miss Po Lee San, who was up against the Singapore Democratic Party's chief, Chee Soon Juan. Miss Po getting 53% of the vote. I asked Mr. Ong what he thought of this sample count. He wouldn't say much, except that it was still too early to tell. I also want to talk about, we also saw Minister Chee Hong Tat, Transport Minister Chee Hong Tat also make his way here. He, for the first time, anchoring Bishan Toa Payoh GRC following the retirement of veteran and longtime Defence Minister Ng Eng Hen. He's securing over 70% of the vote there as well. He said that we will have to wait for the final results to come in before he makes further comments, but he told us that the obligation and commitment for anyone that is elected is to ensure that the town is well taken care of. And for now, back to you in the studio.
All right, Olivia, thank you so much. Sorry, actually. Okay, so the mood, understandably very ebullient, at the PAP assembly centres.
Especially about Jalan Kayu. I mean, the sample count numbers that came out. Ng Chee Meng 52%, Andre Lau 48%, and there we were talking about. Oh, hang on one second. I believe we've got Mr. Chee Hong Tat speaking now. Let's listen in.
We'll wait for the final results to come out, but regardless of the results, if we are elected, we will make sure that we put in our best effort, we'll work as a team, we will rejuvenate our town, we will make sure we improve the lives of our residents in Bishan Toa Payoh. Thank you.
And your expectations so far?
But we'll wait for the final results to come out. Thank you so much.
Still very quiet with the results. With a big margin.
Doesn't want to jump the gun until the official results are coming in. But as we were saying, quite the mood at the PAP, assembly centre is obviously quite high.
The expectations
quite positive at this time. However, maybe a bit of anxiety when it comes to Jalan Kayu, SMC. The numbers there, 52% for the PAP's Ng Chee Meng and 48% for Andre Lau at this time. So well within the margin of error for sample count. So what do you think's happened? What's the problem with Ng Chee Meng? He's tried. He succeeded once, failed twice, may yet fail again.
I guess with the the Income Alliance we were just chatting about, maybe didn't have that much of an impact on his popularity there, and he had a lot of PAP members backing him as well. So all of that played a part, probably.
I think yes and no. If you look at the entire debate about NTUC Alliance saga, I think you have Assembly coming to the front to go and explain the situation. You have PM Lawrence Wong coming to explain the situation. So there are a lot of big wigs in this, trying to support Ng Chee Meng, in explaining the situation. So it's not just on one sided. I mean, in that sense, it's not just Ng Chee Meng trying to defend himself. So I think that might have also voters might have taken those things into consideration and just say, okay, maybe there are more things that we haven't really seen enough. So I think that could be one of it. But I think it boils down to the question that I mentioned earlier: trust. 52%. Is it a huge amount of trust there? I don't know. I leave it to Singaporeans to think about it.
It's also quite interesting. We talked about the youngness of Punggol GRC, Jalan Kayu SMC. I understand made up of 50% Gen Zs and millennials as well. Do you think they were, apart from the question of trust, do you think they were attracted, to Andre Lau because he's 33 years old? Yes, that's right. He has received a sample count 48%. I think a considerable percentage of them may have come from the younger voters, and that's why the contest there is relatively close. I think as far as the Mr. Ng's performance there, I think it's whether it's 52 or 51 or 53, because it's the first past the post system. I think as far as the PAP is concerned, they will take it. And particularly when it's up against the Workers' Party.
And just in recent days, Andre Lau, unfortunately, his text, his Telegram text, where he made some rude remarks about residents using foul language and all of that, came to the fore. Do you think that would have impacted voters, when they're as they go to vote today, they're thinking at first I want to vote for Andre, but now I've changed my mind.
I don't think that has a huge impact. If you've got friends like this, who needs enemies? So good luck to Andre finding out who actually revealed those. It's rather insidious, I would say. But I think voters will most probably have a more rational mind, and they'll realize that this is not a reflection of what he is and who he is at this juncture.
I think if I could add, because of the closeness of the contest, let's say Mr. Ng does get over the line, then Andre Loh may well be up for an NCMP position. So he could still join Parliament. And if you look at Sembawang West, which is also very close, that if Ms. Poh wins there and it is close, then we may see Dr. Chi as an NCMP in Parliament.
Okay, quickly, I wanted to quickly talk about Nee Soon GRC as well. That sample count came in. 74% for the PAP, led by K. Shanmugam, the Law Minister, against Red Dot United, which managed to get 26%. Again, I can't imagine that either of you would be surprised, Dr. Tan.
No, not surprised at all. I think it's a stronghold of the PAP, and I think Shanmugam has done a very good job there.
In fact, it was 61.9% in 2020 for the PAP. As it stands, 74%. So that is a significant jump in terms of support
and
as well.
And there was a lot of talk about, the 4 new faces, and he carries so much weight that he can, carry them all, and I mean the numbers show it.
I mean, he may carry all of them with him, but I think each one of them would also have to play their part. Even though they are new faces, they would have to work the ground. And I think each one of them they have proven themselves, and I think the results illustrate that as a collective, they have been able to get there.
And the opposition RDU was actually led by the SecGen of SecGen himself, Ravi Philemon. So this must be particularly disappointing for him.
It will do, but like what I said again, it all depends on whether that particular party that is contesting there, are able to attract the kind of voter sentiments as well. So, RDU is also new to that area, despite that Ravi is also probably well experienced politician.
I think one could say about Ravi's performance, I think, has been quite impressive. Coming from Red Dot United party that may not have gotten the support this time around, but I think Ravi has really upped the game, and I think we'll have to see what happens next. I think it is he may have plans
further on that. When you say he has upped the game,
I mean he has been in the round table. I mean he has.
Sorry, I have to interrupt you.
Interviews and
Angela,
podcasting as
well. Yes, I do, Telly. Let's take a quick look at the next sample count numbers we have coming right in for us. Hougang SMC, this is a Workers' Party stronghold. The Workers' Party pulling strongly 63% of the votes against PAP newcomer Marshall Lim with 37% of the votes. And it looks like we have another sample count coming in. Let's get that up on the screen for you. Jalan Besar GRC, 75% of the votes going to the PAP, with the PAR 25%, a very strong lead here by the PAP, almost a 10% jump from the last election. Back to you on the desk.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. Yeah, Jalan Besar 75%. Indeed, last GE 65%, helmed by Josephine Teo. I mean, that's not really a surprise there, is it? I mean, are you more surprised that PAR managed to get 25%?
Yes, at least this is one of the GRCs they have been able to keep their deposits. I think it's very unfortunate for the rest of for the teams, the rest of the other constituencies they have contested.
So OMPP has they've been doing very well, right? At the mid 70s, high 70s, even for the stronghold, but they have really improved those numbers, even for Nee Soon as well. Now earlier we had results for Hougang. Hougang, so 63% against Marshall Lim, who's a new face, a new candidate, right?
Yeah.
So
a lawyer.
Yeah. No surprises there.
No surprise. I think Hougang is mainstay of the Workers' Party, very stronghold of the Workers' Party. So clearly no surprises over there.
It was also quite interesting. While PAP share has increased, WP share has also increased in Sengkang and Hougang, and it's about the same in Aljunied as well. It may go higher after the sample count is confirmed, is finalized.
Yeah. So what do you make of that?
I would say that the voters see PAP as forming the government, but they also see WP as an effective and responsible opposition.
Okay. So as it stands, based on the sample counts which have come in, the Workers' Party has retained Okang, has retained El Junit, has retained Sengkang as well. So would Pritam Singh be reasonably happy, disappointed? Where does it put the Workers' Party? You know, they've tried again to convince people, you know, that a two-party or multi-party system is something that we are ready for, and you know that it is not going to collapse. You know, if you voted more opposition lawmakers in, but you know what will he be thinking right now?
I think he has made a very good effort in trying to expand the Workers' Party into other constituencies. We still have yet to know what's going to happen in East Coast and also in Tampines, so we do not know that. But I think keeping these three constituencies does reflect that at least we are going back to status quo. Everyone's happy. In fact, the Workers' Party should be a bit happier because they have increased their margins. The margins as well. So I think looking at the whole situation right now, as it remains, it seems that we are seeing a status quo, a return to status quo, and it's kind of comfortable for everyone because there's no real rejigging of alliances at this juncture.
Yeah, a big part of it. I mean, the ruling party, they've been pushing very hard about, tariffs. The world is changing, it's turbulent, we need a steady hand to be able to steer us through the storm. So do you you think is pertinent to, voters when they were deciding who to vote for?
I think definitely that if this sort of conversation will be one of their concerns when looking at global issues as well. And I think the rhetoric or what the Prime Minister have been talking about that you need a strong mandate, you need a strong government does reflect in this general election as well. And I think but the people also concerned that all right, we want the government, we want the PAP to remain, but we also would want the opposition to remain. Okay. But which opposition? So they are also rooting for the Workers' Party.
Right. Okay. So they've made their choice, and would you say they made a safe choice at this time? Meaning they've only, retained the Workers' Party's, I suppose, wards, and are cautious about doing a little bit more. I mean, would you describe it that way, Dr. Mustafa?
Yes, there's some caution in it. They are discerning as well. They know what's happening around the world and how they need to vote for it, how they're going to vote accordingly. And I think, as has been mentioned by Dr. Tan, we see it reflected in the results thus far.
Okay. So we were talking about NCMPs, a little earlier, and what are some of the chances. So the PAP, they've been assuring voters that don't worry, there will always be opposition voices through NCMPs, while the WP argued that NCMPs don't quite carry the same weight, as elected MPs. I mean, that sort of messaging, do you think it cut through to undecided voters?
I guess where does the NCMP system stand now? Has it been effective as envisioned or as put forward by the ruling party, and does the opposition, and in particular Pritam Singh, see it that way?
I mean, from the perspective of the opposition, I think if you look at Workers' Party, they had NCMPs before, and those NCMPs subsequently became elected MPs. Yeah. So I assume it does have an impact. Okay. It's how they use it to increase their political their political mileage, the way that the people of Singapore will look at it.
Right. Yeah. Second there, we have a sample count. Angela?
That's right, guys. We have the final two sample counts for you, and these are both very closely watched. Starting with Tampines GRC, this four-cornered fight with the PAP taking 53% of the votes. We also have the Workers' Party with 46% of the votes, PPP with 1%, and the NSP with 0%. These, of course, numbers that are rounded down. So let's take a look again at PAP, 53%. At this point, the margin of error is quite small, taking note that the sample count numbers might differ 5%, give or take, from the actual result. And finally, we have a key battleground here, the East Coast GRC. PAP team led by Edwin Tong, 59% of the votes against the Workers' Party's 41%. This is a 6% jump from the last election from the team by the PAP. So it's back to you.
Thanks a lot for that. Yeah. So the final two results, the key battlegrounds, we were so keen to look out for. Results are out, both in PAP's favor according to a sample count. So let's start with East Coast GRC. At first, for East Coast, it's interesting because PAP, led by Edwin Tong, they fielded some new faces, Dinesh, Haslina, and they were popular on the ground, weren't they?
I think, for example, Hasina, I think she did, if you look at the Fullerton rally where she made her speech, the narrative that, or at least how she performed then, tried to reach out to very young voters, especially the Gen Zs, the use of words like no cap, and I think that might have an effect as well for the younger voters, the first-time voters in East Coast GRC, and I think this time around they have found an East Coast plan. So I think that's a good, by and large, a good thing for the PAP in this election for the East Coast team.
Yeah, it was 53.4% in 2020, one of the poorest results for the PAP. So that's an improvement. I want to quickly go back to this point, the difference between an estate or a ward where there's a lot more private property and condos versus HDB flats, and East Coast happens to be one where nearly half, 48.2% live in landed property and condos. I mean, how big of a factor is this in terms of you're putting forward candidates and how qualified they are and what they stand for?
I think there is a blurring of the line. Yeah. It may well have been the case that in past elections, I suppose that there is a kind of a distinction of where you live as how you vote. But it's not, there's a blurring of the line. So perhaps it's more the focus on issues now, focusing on the candidates. And I think all of those things, may matter more to the voter than as reflected in this particular election.
And also talking about the WP slate at East Coast, Yi Zhenzhong, and three new faces over there. I mean, it's not quite the A team. Do you think it would have made a difference? There was talk about maybe Pritam Singh moving or even moving Sylvia, and that if one of these big guns had gone over to East Coast, would it have tilt the?
There's always that possibility, but I think the Workers' Party have taken a cautious approach here to keep the Aljunied team intact and let the newer faces and perhaps some old hand to lead those teams. And so we see in East Coast. Of course, Yi Zhenzhong is a familiar face. He was an NCMP before as well, and he knows the area very well. Okay. He studied there and so on. So I think it's more to do with the leadership provided by Minister Tong, where his Juchat ward was carved out of Marine Parade and got into East Coast, as well as the role played by the newer faces, including Haslina and Dinesh.
Okay. So you say that they were a bit cautious in terms of where they fielded and who they fielded, but at the same time, the Workers' Party, first of all, attacked the Deputy Prime Minister. They did that, quite strongly. They talked a lot about new faces, diversity, having a young team, but they haven't increased their number of seats so far. I mean, so how would you interpret this for the Workers' Party? Is this defeat? Is this something that they need to relook in terms of overall strategy, or is this simply because the PAP and the Prime Minister Lawrence Wong has put forward such a compelling message that it wouldn't have made a difference anyway, Dr. Tan?
I think in this particular general election, I think the Workers' Party, what it's doing is that it's telling voters that you can vote with your conscience, vote, in a way that they can assure you that no feathers will be ruffled, right? Because the status quo will remain as it is. So they took thinking on that basis, they thought perhaps they can spread a little bit further into Punggol, into Tampines. I think as the sample count has shown, again, sample count at this point in time, it shows that it's not really paying off. Okay. And that's a bit unfortunate.
So you were saying earlier that they need more time. So did they rush into this particular strategy of trying to get Tampines and Punggol? I mean, those results are not confirmed, but did they rush? Was it too early? Should they have waited to, 2030 or thereabouts, the next election before they
they do have something like that. They do have the candidates at this point in time. So it's about where to place them and give them that sort of political experience. If it's not now, they don't start now. If they start in 2030, then it will probably be too late by then, because residents and voters will not have the time to understand who they are, and listen to their point of view. So at this juncture, at least they know these individuals and these candidates, and if they are fielded again, and if they do continue to walk the ground, and if the electoral boundary still remains the same, then perhaps they will stand a better chance. Again, just a better chance. Okay.
Oh, we still have lots to unpack, but for now, we are going to take a short breather, but stay with us. We are keeping up our coverage of Singapore Votes 2025.
Eco.
MC on stage. MC on stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, how are y'all feeling?
How are you guys? A little dampened? No? Yeah, a little bit. But we're still here, isn't it? Because we're still waiting for the actual results.
Yeah!
Be positive, it's just a sample count. Come on, cheer our candidates who are here with us. Come on, give them a round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, these gentlemen over here have been working so hard.
Okay,
not just for the last 9 days, but the last 2 weeks, months, as well as the last 5 years since the last election. So can we give them a round of applause, please?
Thank you for offering Singaporeans alternative. Good job.
Thank you for giving a voice for all of us.
And thank you for all of you joining us. We are very, very touched.
As I said earlier, those of you who are here because you love us, right?
Perhaps.
And you're here because you don't live anywhere near here. You made your way specially down here.
No comments.
Just for us. And for that, we are really, really appreciative of that.
Thank you.
Now, I had a question over there. What time? What time? I also would like to know what time. However, whenever the votes are very close, you know very surely that whoever calls the victory, the other side will call for a recount. So it will take a while. It will take a while. But we are all here because we believe in the process of democracy. We also believe in our leaders who are here to represent us and also stay through the night to make sure that by the end of the night, it seems though we are in the running for at least one NCMP in Parliament, isn't it?
Yeah!
And you know, SDP is a party that always show appreciation. First, before we end the night, you know, later it will be too exciting for us to announce anything. Let us take this opportunity to thank all our change maker, our volunteers that has worked with us all these years and not just this election. Can you join us to give us a round of applause to our change maker, our volunteers?
They are all around you, all around you, because we're not just here in front. Some of them are still working even as we speak over there at the merchandise booth on the side. So even as you're on your way out, if you would still like to support us, please do so. Please kindly do so at the merchandise booth.
And also, I have to give special thanks to our men in blue, led by Carl. Very nice gentleman, very hardworking police that has been with us, you know, all these 9 days of rally and plus 8 days of rally plus today the assembly center. They are here to ensure that we are safe, everything is in orderly manner. So can you join us also to give them a round of applause, like our police,
Once again, I say these are our civil servants, just like some of you as well are civil servants. Can we at least thank the gentleman in blue, please?
Thank you, Carl and team, thank you. And also our media team, thank you for also being here with us. And all these, how many days? 8 days of rally. Thank you for doing the live reporting as well.
Somehow we mix up 8 days, 9 days, because I just realized that we have 9 rallies, but in 8 days, because we were the only ones who did rally every day, and on Sunday, twice a day.
Okay.
So let's look for the results then.
With our junior GRC, this is a Workers' Party stronghold. WP with 59% against PAP with 41%. And coming up next, we have Ang Mo Kio GRC, a PAP stronghold, this time helmed by Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong. 79% of the votes against the PPP with 10% and SUP with 11%. Next up, we have Bukit Gombak SMC. The PAP polling strongly as well, 75% against the PSP's Harish Pillay with 25%. Bukit Panjang SMC, a closely watched one, but the PAP taking this one for now at 62% against SDP's Paul Tambaya at 38%. Again, this is a sample count, so do take note of that, and we'll wait for the results to come in. Bishan Toa Payoh GRC, another stronghold for the PAP. The PAP team led by Chi Hong Tat has 75% of the sample count against SPP's 25%. And Choa Chu Kang GRC, PAP with 63% against PSP's 37%. And next up, East Coast GRC, a closely watched constituency, PAP with 59% against Workers' Party, taking 41% of the sample count. And Hokang SMC, 63% of the votes go to Workers' Party's Dennis Tan and 37% to Marshall Lip from the PAP. Next up, Holland Bukit Timah GRC, a strong 80% goes to the PAP team against Red Dot United's 20%. And up next, let's look at Jalan Besar GRC, 75%, another strong lead for the PAP against PAR's 25%. And again, let's look at Jurong Central SMC, a new SMC here. Sia Yao Chuan pulling very strongly, 81% for the PAP against Red Dot United's Kala Manikam with 19% of the sample count. Jurong East Bukit Batok GRC, a newly carved GRC, PAP's team led by Grace Fu with 76% of the sample count against RDU's 24%. And a close fight here, Jalan Kayu SMC. PAP's Ng Chee Meng, 52% of the sample count against Andre Lo's 48%. This falls within the margin of error of up to 5%. And Kebun Baru SMC now, Henry Quek, 66%. PSP's Tony Tan with a 34%. Up next, Mountbatten SMC. The PAP newcomer Goh Soo-ki, 62% of the sample count, and Jeremy Tan, independent candidate, taking 38% of the sample count. Marymount SMC, Gan Xiao Huang from the PAP with 71% of the votes against PSP's Jeffrey Koo with 29%. And let's take a look at more sample count numbers that we have for you. Marsiling UT GRC, helmed by Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, 74% of the sample count against SDP's 26%. And in Nee Soon GRC, another strong lead, 74% to the PAP against RDU's 26%. More numbers for you. Pongal GRC, a closely watched one, a close fight here, 54% to the PAP, the Workers' Party with 46%. In Pasir Ris Changi GRC, a new GRC, the team led by Indrani Raja, 67% against SDA's 33%. And in Pioneer SMC, PAP's Patrick Tay with 66% and 34% goes to PSP newcomer Stephanie Tan. In Potong Pasir SMC, the three-cornered fight, PAP is Alex Yeo, 71%, PAR 8%, and SPP with 21% of the sample count. In Queenstown SMC, a strong lead for Eric Chua, the PAP, 82% against PAR's Mahabub Bacha with 18%. Radin Mas SMC, this three-cornered fight goes to the PAP, 69% for Melvin Yong, independent candidate Darryl Low with 24% and PAR with 7%. And Sembawang GRC, now another three-cornered fight, the PAP taking 67%, the SDP with 31% and NSP with just 2% of the sample count. Next up, Sembawang West SMC, another close contest here. PAP's Kobe San just pulling slightly ahead with 53%, and the SCP's Chi Sun Juan with 47%. In Sengkang GRC, the WP seems to be keeping their votes 56% against PAP's 44%. And next up, Tampines Changkat SMC, a new SMC here, another close fight. Desmond Chu from PAP with 55%, the Workers' Party taking 45% here. Tampines GRC, the only four-cornered fight in this election, the PAP with 53% of the sample count, the Workers' Party here with 46%, the PPP with 1%, and the NSP with 0% of the sample count. In Tanjung Pagar GRC, a strong lead for the PAP, 81% and 19% for PAR. West Coast Jurong West GRC, another key battleground, PAP with 61% and the PSP with 39%. And the final one for you in Yio Chu Kang SMC, a strong lead by the PAP, Yip Hon Wing with 76% and PAR's Michael Fung with 24%. And that's a wrap of the sample count numbers that we have for you at the moment. And of course, we have Shah and Steve who have just joined us in the studio as well. It's back to you guys.
That's right. Thanks a lot, Angela. We had another shift change, so we're keeping things moving. Unfortunately, gentlemen, you can't go anywhere. We don't have any of you to replace, But yeah, the sample count numbers have come in fast and furiously, and we gotta say, fairly astounding numbers. A few of them in the 80% range. That is surprising, is it not?
I think it is definitely very surprising. I think we all discussed a bit earlier, that I don't think it's ever happened before in the GRCs that it was that high. Yeah, since it started, that higher percentage of votes given to a GRC team, because it's a team of 5 or 4 members. Individually, perhaps I think even that high, 81%.
Usually in the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that was quite a surprise.
As we are speaking, we see a little box there. We are waiting the returning officer to come up to the podium to
the final
results, the first at least for the night. Yes.
Yeah, so there's a chance we might all actually get to go home a bit earlier tonight. And the way things are going.
So back to that point, Dr. Tan, what could have contributed to this very resounding victory so far that we've seen for the PAP? At least, because these are, of course, the sample counts, right?
For many reasons. I think one of the reasons could be also the trust in PM Lawrence Wong. He's a new Prime Minister. He's just taken over the mantle. And so,
okay, cut you off. We have the returning officer coming in with some results.
Parliamentary General Election 2025. Result for Electoral Division of Radin Mas. Kumar, son of Apavu, People's Alliance for Reform, 1,682 votes. Daryl Loh Ka Keong, Independent Candidate, 5,362 votes. Melvin Yong Ik Chai, People's Action Party, 15,801 votes. Total votes cast for the candidates, 22,845. Rejected votes, 444. The votes cast in Singapore, which have been counted for Radin Mas, are conclusive of the result. I declare Melvin Yong Ik Chai of People's Action Party as the candidate duly elected for Radin Mas.
掌声鼓励鼓励.
All right, so our first official result for the night, and that is for Radin Mas SMC, PAP's Melvin Yong there, winning this electoral contest. What do you make of this, Dr. Mustafa? Any surprises so far?
No, I think it's a PAP stronghold. It goes all the way back to when Mr. Sam Tan was helming Radin Mas, and now Melvin Yong is now helming it. So certainly no surprises there.
Yeah, and as we see, we've got the percentage just now on screen. So these are the actual numbers. Sample count was 69. Here we see it's 69.17 versus 23.47 and 7.36. So sample count very accurate. The independent, Daryl Loh. Dr. Tan, I know you're smiling and saying, this young man, tell us why.
Yeah, I think if you listen to his speeches, it's very composed, very articulate. It makes sense. And, for someone his age, I think he's about 30 plus, I think very young, a very young independent candidate.
He's 28.
28,
he's one of the youngest,
Yeah, one of the youngest, 28 years old. And for someone of his age to come out to contest and make sense of what he wants to put forth, I think that is bravery, and thank goodness he keep his deposits. Yeah, I think that's definitely one.
Yes, I believe for him. He's one of the 2 independents this year. We're seeing joining the electoral contest, right? How does this influence Singapore's political landscape as a whole, having seen these independents coming forward, being so confident to contest?
I think we've seen greater credibility, the independent candidates fielding themselves in this general election. And I think that bodes well for those who may want to stand as independent candidates in subsequent elections. So the 2 candidates which I think have fared well despite not being able to get over the line, but they've not lost their deposit, and I think they did very well for themselves, will blaze the trail for other independents in future.
Yeah, I think they will set the bar, and it's these 2 independent candidates set the bar really high. So I think think, hopefully we will see in the future more of them. And
and they're still young. They've got a long runway ahead of them.
And in fact, they've done better than some of the other more established parties, so to speak, which also says something about, I guess, who they are and how they've come into this. Is this something we were likely to see more in future elections, do you think?
There is a possibility for that to take place, but I think there's still the charm in being part of a political party, I guess. So I think political parties are there to state the question of which political party.
But that can work against them too. I mean, imagine if this young man had joined one of the others. I think his numbers would be worse.
It's a double edge, isn't it? Yeah. So I think they have made a conscious choice of being an independent candidate, and they have performed well. Credit to that.
I think this brings us to the point of this 32-year-old entrepreneur, Chia Yun Kai. He had his own party. It's called Most Valuable Party. And then he came in contesting under SDA banner on nomination day. I mean, that was quite interesting, quite a surprise to see, right? Is this something that we should expect to see more of in future elections?
I think if you're going to stand as an independent candidate, you could do that, or you want to join a political party. I think, but choose wisely which political party you want to go and join. I think, that could be a challenge there in itself, and I think, but by and large, they do make sense of what they want, and I just do hope that some of the things that they want to introduce, on the policy changes that they want to introduce, might be taken as positive feedback.
Okay, we've got more results coming in. Let's listen in.
Parliamentary General Election 2025. Result for Electoral Division of Marymount. Gan Xiao Huang, People's Action Party, 14,868 votes. Koo Po Tiong, Jeffrey, Progress Singapore Party, 6,163 votes. Total votes cast for the candidates, 21,031. Rejected votes, 251. The votes cast in Singapore, which have been counted for Marymount, are conclusive of the result. I declare Gan Xiao Huang of People's Action Party as the candidate duly elected for Marymount.
Just heard the results there from Marymount, the PAP taking that spot. Marymount is one of 4 SMCs not affected actually by the latest electoral boundary changes, so it's status quo for them.
There you have it, the numbers there. Gan Xiao Huang with 70.7% of the votes. Trailing behind is Jeffrey Koo at 29.3% of the vote share.
What do you make of these numbers? Dr. Mustafa?
I think we expected her to retain it. I think where the surprise is the margin of victory. So she has 70%, a huge jump from 2020 general election.
I mean, if we look at GE 2020, Gan Xiao Huang won about 55% of the vote against another PSP candidate, that was Dr. Ang Yong Guan. I mean, clearly she has done better this time round. I mean, what went wrong for the PSP in this contest?
I think fielding a different person, that could be one of the reasons. And also, I'm not too sure whether it's a PSP fault or, the PAP has done a good job. It was 5 years, that was during the pandemic as well. And 5 years later, I think residents there can really tell what the PAP has done for them. And I think this is translate into the votes as we have seen over here.
I mean, I would attribute the result more to the performance of Ms. Gard rather than the performance of the PSP candidate.
I guess she's had those years to be on the ground. People have come to know her. They've met her. They've seen her. Jeffrey, probably, I don't know. I mean, I don't live in that area, but because he's a new face, he would have to struggle with that uphill task of getting to know people and not have a very long runway for that.
I think that's the problem with a lot of opposition when they are going into a contest. A lot of times they are not really walked the ground, and with the exception of some of them, But again, residents must start all over again with a new individual in a contest like that.
Is that something the opposition parties need to look at in terms of their strategy? It needs to be a long-term plan. They need to be in it for the long haul, fielding the same faces now, 5 years later, maybe even 10 years later, right?
I mean, it is a continuous process. So any party that's a serious party would do that. The staying power has to be there. It's by not winning, you want to stay there and then try and Frank get over the line in subsequent elections. And I think that speaks well to a credible party.
I mean, in the case of PSP, seems like based on the sample counts and this official result, they have failed to make any inroads in this election. I mean, what kind of questions or discussions would they have to make after this election? What will happen to the party?
That's a good question. What would happen to the party? I think even if you look at it, Dr. Tan Cheng Bock is not going to run again. Will he still be in the party? I mean, he's just been voted into the CEC of the PSP. So will that be a continuation? Would he be able to find new blood for the PSP? What's the agenda? What's the objective for the PSP moving forward as well?
Okay, any moment now we're expecting more results to come in. That's why we've got that picture in your screens. But Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, I mean, the effect of having him there, I mean, that allure, I guess, is it going to carry on? Because the renewal hasn't been very sustainable.
A short answer, no.
Okay.
I think Dr. Tan Cheng Bock came on as a very strong personality. He was there from day one in 2020. But after this, where will he be? I think that's the question.
Yeah, I think there's someone else has to carry the torch.
Yeah.
I think.
Do they have that someone else?
That's the big question here for the PSP. So I think Dr. Tan has taken the party as far as he can. And I think it would now rely a lot on Hazel Phua and Leong Man Wai to carry the torch.
I want to look at what PSP can do moving forward. I mean, how can it successfully transition from this personality-driven campaign or party to an institutional one? What strategies can it use to sort of retain the Tan Cheng Bock popularity, that appeal, while also introducing new candidates as credible successors?
See, PSP is a newer party compared to, say, the Workers' Party, so there is a lot that can be done. I think from this...
more results coming in. Just cut you off for a moment.
Parliamentary General Election 2025. Result for Electoral Division of Queenstown. Eric Chua Swee Leong, People's Action Party, 29,900 votes. Mahabub Bacha, son of Abdul Rashid, People's Alliance for Reform, 4,864 votes. Total votes cast for the candidates, 25,764. Rejected votes, 704. The votes cast in Singapore, which have been counted for Queenstown, are conclusive of the result. I declare Eric Chua Swee Leong of People's Action Party as the candidate duly elected for Queenstown. Result for Electoral Division of Bukit Gombak. Harish Pillay, Progress Singapore Party, 5,682 votes. Low Yen Ling, People's Action Party, 17,826 votes. Total votes cast for the candidates, 23,508. Rejected votes, 298. The votes cast in Singapore, which have been counted for Bukit Gombak, are conclusive of the result. I declare Low Yen Ling of People's Action Party as the candidate duly elected for Bukit Gombak.
Okay, so we just had the results for Queenstown and Bukit Gombak, both going to the PAP with very clear margins there. I mean, Bukit Gombak though, I think, Okay, Queenstown first, because that was actually carved out from Tanjong Pagar GRC, so this is a new SMC.
That's right, new SMCs, as per Bukit Gombak as well, that's a new SMC. But let's take a look at the numbers for Queenstown SMC. We're looking at 81%. At about 81% for PAP's Eric Chua. For PR's Mahabub Bacha, he's taking about 19% of the votes there. That's quite a huge margin for Eric Chua.
So this is not unexpected, right? You guys are saying that?
Yeah.
But this is his first electoral contest as a candidate in an SMC. I mean, he's done pretty well on his own there.
But is this really about Eric or the party? Are people voting for the party in this case, or are they voting for Eric Chua?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
You don't say.
I think Eric Chua, he's a political office holder, and he was part of the Tanjong Pagar GRC, where Queenstown was carved out of. and from what I understand, he works the ground there really well. So I think it's just as much as it is of the party as it is of him winning the election in his constituency with that high figure.
Yeah, I think it clearly demonstrates that it's more than just the party and also the individual matter, because when you come to a single seat, SMC, for example, the individual plays also a very important role, because voters will need to know and see what they have done in that constituency as well, or in that ward.
All right.
Yeah, because we're only talking about number of voters is like 26, 27,000, 28,000 people. Bukit Gombak?
We have about 76% for PAP's Low Yen Ling there. PSP's Harish Pillai taking about 24% of the vote.
Yeah, also a new SMC. So would you say the same thing? Again, Low Yen Ling, it's not her first time. She's definitely a familiar face on the ground there.
I mean, even these SMCs, they were part of a larger GRCs, and the candidates that have been filtered there were incumbent in those wards. So they start off with the incumbency advantage. So certainly the results are not surprising.
But something I want to highlight is that the PAP wins. I mean, they're taking such a strong vote share for each of their wins here. I mean, we're looking at 75%, and previously for Harry Chua, it's 80%. I mean, what do you make of these numbers?
I think it's certainly high, of course. And also the fact that we had mentioned this earlier, it depends on which party the PAP is up against, right? So it's WP, it seems a lot closer with the contest that we've seen. With the other parties, there's a lot of distance between the two parties.
Does that speak about the credibility of the opposition party? Do those numbers reflect that?
I think credibility to which opposition party? Again, we tend to conflate the idea that all opposition party as monolithic, that they're all the same because they're clumped together as opposition party, but they are not, because they have their own agenda, they have their own policies, they have their own manifestos, and each we need to measure them separately and understand them separately as well.
Does this also talk about Singapore as in, because we're so small, do we not have the capacity to have more than just one opposition? Imagine if we had 3 or 4 in parliament. I mean, would we really be,
We can have more opposition parties, that's fine, but the thing is that they also have to be realistic whether they will win or not. So I think, and you want to go into a contest, again,
you see, there are many who may want to put themselves forward, but may not necessarily be accepted by the Workers' Party, and they still want to be filtered. Then they will go to other parties as well.
And there's also some of them jumping ship as well, so that's also a concern.
So I think if you look at the result, is as much as about the opposition party that's contesting there, as it is, of course, the PAP candidate themselves or how they work the crowd. That's also equally important.
Okay, all right. We'll continue this conversation, but for now, National Development Minister Desmond Lee, leading the PAP slate in West Coast Jurong West GRC, has been speaking to the media. Let's listen in.
Mr. Lee, can we get some comments from you on the sample count results?
Well, it's the sample count result, and so we are awaiting the final results. But I want to take this opportunity first and foremost, while we're waiting for the results, to thank everybody, to thank the residents for coming out in force for this GE. I think although sample has got some level of statistical significance, I think we wait for the final results. But I think I want to thank the residents nevertheless for coming out and exercising their choice. I want to take this opportunity also to thank the many activists and supporters. Whilst we wait the final results, they put in a lot of effort over the last 5 years, over the last 9 days, working hard to connect with residents, support residents, and in fact helping us to develop the plans that we have put in place for the next 5. I want also to thank Dr. Tan Ching Bock and his team, as well as the PSP, for putting in a very strong contest, for raising good ideas, and for engaging with us for a better Singapore. And I want to once again make the commitment that if the results show that residents have chosen us. We have 5 years to put in all the plans that we are committed to do. So even as we work at the national level in Parliament and working with the elected government of the day to make sure that the national plans better support residents, we will also have 9 important pillars of work, ranging from seniors to youth, cost of living, jobs, mental health, sustainability, disability, helping the low income and vulnerable. All these are things we've committed to do. We've already started some of the work already over the last year, 2 years, and we're committed, if ultimately elected by the people of West Coast Jurong West, to continue this important work on the ground for them.
Right, so considering you're going up against the PAP, what has been called as the PSP A team, and given the close fight in the last 3 years, is this margin something that you had expected?
Well, if you ask me honestly, not really, because it's a very intense contest, but it was a very dignified one. It was robust. Everyone had very robust debates in public as part of the campaign. But I think ultimately we conducted it in a dignified way, and it's a maturing of our system. And I think this bodes well for Singapore.
部长，那么现在是创第一场结果，可是你们的成绩已经比上一届大选好很多，有没有话想要对居民们说？
That's from National Development Minister Desmond Lee there, speaking about West Coast GLC. Just let you know, I mean, you're hearing different languages because our colleagues are actually covering in many different languages, well, in the English, Mandarin, Tamil, and Malay as well. So you can join those broadcasts there too. But let's talk a bit about West Coast Jurong GLC.
That's right. I mean, Minister Lee said, we'll have to wait for the final results. But let's talk about his performance so far. I mean, his campaigning at West Coast Jurong West GRC. I mean, this is his debut as anchor minister, right?
After losing Mr. Swaran.
That's right, and having moved from Jurong GRC to West Coast GRC to help strengthen the team in 2020. How much of a stabilizing force is Desmond Lee for the PAP at this point?
I think he has been well received, even in the 2020 general election as well. He was well received in his ward, given the kind of vote counts there as well. So it's not surprising that there's an upswell, perhaps, of voters, of supporters in this newly constituted GRC as well. So I think, given the fact that, he has a sort of support, and it's again parts of the newly formed West Coast Jurong West GRC constitute, the former Jurong GRC as well. So it's a PAP stronghold, and that adds to the support that he's getting in that area. But it does also reflect what he has done, as an anchor minister. And for the first time, there's again back to the whole idea of trust in this situation.
You talk about Jurong because that was President Tharman's sort of ward, and he was very much liked. He had very high numbers. Did that play a part in contributing to this result?
Definitely, he's a known entity there in the area. He has not really moved too far apart from those residents, and so again, voters there know him as well and what he has done on the ground.
Dr. Mustafa, do you think his national stature and policy work on housing is translating into votes at the local level?
Yes, to a certain degree.
It is going to be too late. I will have to exfiltrate from the assembly center at MOE Stadium, Evans, in order to catch the last bus. I hope I gave you a snapshot of how the area, the people, the atmosphere is like at this particular location. Unfortunately, on the mobile stream, I am unable to rate any other live streams that are covering the general election results. You can manually search for Channel News Asia and attempt to resume your watching.
Yeah, so we'd like to invite Dr. Paul, our chairman, to come on stage.
I was about to leave,
thank everybody,
and now I'm getting sucked back in. Why?
Thank you very much. So obviously, I would have been, obviously I would have preferred to have different set of results. We're coming and talking to you. But, this is the reality of what we do in politics in Singapore. And I think it's just a reminder that David only beats Goliath in biblical times. And there are tremendous structural obstacles. But despite these obstacles, every single one of you has put in a tremendous amount of effort. Whether it's on the stage, it's in social media, it's emceeing, it's photography, it's knocking on doors, it's putting stamps on mailers, it's flyering, it's helping with house visits. There are just so many things. They're just way too numerous to count. And it's just really, really remarkable. And this is what the SDP is all about. So even though the results as a whole have been disappointing, there is a silver lining. And this is what Dr. Chi has asked me to tell you, is that he's going to be very late. He's actually going to ask for a recount. And he suggested that some of y'all who need to go home should go home. I told him nobody will go home. Okay? But if you have to go home, please go home, because it's going to take a really long time. And I told him that if he gets to be an MP or even an NCMP, that's the SDP back in Parliament after 28 years. So that is a silver lining. And to me, that's a pretty darn good silver lining, for this cloud that has come over me and the rest of the candidates, where in a way, the only explanation I can really think of off the top of my head is that the politics of fear have dominated over the politics of hope. And it's this constant message of how we're all going to be in trouble because of a mercurial US president and what he's going to do to the world economy. But anyway, the people have made their choice, and the PAP will be held accountable. So if the economy tanks, which we hope it will not, we can be sure that they'll be coming to SDP and others to ask for advice or stealing our ideas, because that's what they do pretty well. But this is not the time to be snarky. I think, like I said, we want to thank every single one of you for all your hard work. I think the SDP ran a remarkable campaign. We were the only party to run a rally every night plus lunchtime. Yes. Even the PAP couldn't run a rally every night. Yes. And I think that's just a testimony to what the SDP can do. And if Sun Chuan is in Parliament, they just better watch out. Yes. So once again, thank you everyone. And like I said, if you need to go home, don't feel bad. We've been here, we've been with us the last 10 days. We really appreciate what you've done. Sun Chuan says he'll be very, very late. Thank you. What time? Don't know.
There is a long-time supporter that would like to present you with a bouquet of flowers. That's our Madam Yo Bo Hong, who has been with us for the longest time, working very hard. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
I would also like to say that for the 38% that voted for SDP, we thank you very, very much.
You're talking about those in Bukit Panjang.
Correct. For the 62% that yet to vote for us, we will try harder.
We will definitely try harder. We will reach out further, and we hope to be able to convert some of those into our side as well.
Correct. Let's continue with the rest of the result.
Yeah, the next result is coming on.
I think returning officer. Parliamentary General Election 2025. Result for Electoral Division of Queenstown. Eric Chua Sui Leong, People's Action Party, 20,900 votes. Mahabud Bacha, son of Abdul Rashid, People's Alliance for Reform, 4,864 votes. total votes cast for the candidates, 25,764. Rejected votes, 704. The votes cast in Singapore, which have been counted for Queenstown, are conclusive of the result. I declare Eric Chua Swee Leong of People's Action Party as the candidate duly elected for Queenstown.
Okay, so if you're trying to make sense of those numbers, we've been informed that the mistake was actually in the total number of votes cast.
That's right.
But it doesn't affect the final result. PAP still retaining that seat there with a clear margin.
Yeah.
My fellow Singaporeans,
talking about
I will be
new playgrounds and
exfiltrating from the Assembly Centre, MOE Stadium.
Yeah.
Does it always happen?
Hope this gives you a snapshot
Voters can be rather superficial.
how the people, the atmosphere, and the speech from the opposition party. It's like
daily routine, right?
continue your live stream viewing on the Channel News Asia YouTube channel.
Routine. I walk through under-sheltered walkways. If I want to go to a park, if I want to go to a swimming pool, I mean, they are there, the amenities are there. These are very basic necessities because it affects us on a daily
I'll be
basis.
walking to Botanic Gardens MRT station,
Therefore, they are,
downtown line,
these sort of things. Because when I see rats,
Circle Line,
running around
MRT station.
now that is a problem. Did my MP or the town council do something about that? Noise pollution from neighbors. These are the things because it's our lives, it affects us. It's very, very immediate as much as it can be rather superficial.
Yes, absolutely. I think municipal issues are core issues for many voters, and if the MP is able to deliver, they will get the support.
Yeah, which I mean, it doesn't sound great, but it's true because these are the things that we're encountering on a day-to-day basis. Whereas while we may champion Singapore as this little red dot on the world stage, it doesn't necessarily affect my bus commute to Ang Mo Kio in that sense, right? And is it something that is natural? I mean, if we look at a democratic system, is that something that is seen
One last look,
not just
because I do not want to stay here until the first bus on Sunday morning.
I think if you just look at the US election, that is exactly what it is because the ordinary worker in the US is concerned about their day-to-day living expenses, whether do they have a job and whether they buy things. So again, it's back to the very basics.
But how much do these issues weigh against, concerns such as tariff bills, conflict in the Middle East, in Russia,
For those who just joined, you may want to rewind the live stream 20 minutes to come to the highlight or the climax of the live stream. As for me now, walking towards Botanic Gardens MRT station. The MRT station will just be one more bus stop ahead. Well, thank you for coming. See you in 5 years' time. Lightning logo on the lamppost. Botanic Gardens MRT station, Circle Line, Downtown Line.
Your attention please. Bus going to Expo will arrive platform shortly. Thank you.
各位乘客请注意，开往博览方向的进口一趟列车即将抵达月台 B， 谢谢。Silakan ambil perhatian. Kereta api terakhir ke Expo.
Last streets. As with all mobile live streams, please wait for the video to be unprivated to resume your viewing experience. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, click the notification button to be informed of future content. And I hope you found this local affairs to be satisfactory.
前往博览站的进口一趟列车即将从月台 B 开出，乘客请即刻上车，谢谢。Silakan ambil perhatian. Kereta api terakhir ke Expo akan bertolak dari platform B sebentar lagi. Harap naik kereta api ini dengan segera. Terima kasih. Expo செல்லும் கடைசி ரயில் வண்டி இன்னும் சிறிது நேரத்தில் தடம் B இலிருந்து புறப்படும். தயவு செய்து பயணிகள் உடனே ரயிலில் ஏறவும். நன்றி.